All right, I'm just gonna start talking. Um, shoot. And if nobody joins, it's all good. But I wanted to go through the process of telling the story. Now, I do believe that I need to put this up a little bit more. Like if it was, oh, that's why they have you going from up top. But um, it's been a while, and I've been busy. So just had a daughter that got married, and so I'm back. But I wanted to do this live in case anybody wanted to see the process, and then record it also, and then edit it, and knowing how malo ay how's knowing how long this thing takes. And I was watching other videos the other day, and they were talking about how pretty much in a minute of working and editing is equivalent to about an hour of work. So every video that you see that I do that about the journey, every minute you see is about an hour of editing, and I can relate to that because all the chapters that I've gone through already, they're usually 40, 50, some even 60 or 70 minutes, and that's equivalent to that many hours of editing and working. So I thought I'd put the process on here and start doing chapter 7, and so you guys can see what the process of what I go through to get these videos out. But other than that, and how difficult the read is, because I still read this with a dictionary. Let's see what's sort of at. Yep, 7, and how the wording goes. So I thought I'd give it a go. And if anybody's still like, I'm on chapter 7, right? So I've done 6 chapters, and this is taking a couple of years. That's how much time it's taking me just to get to chapter 7, for freaking crying out loud. And that's the time and the hours. But I have some time. I got some time today. So, and I don't know who or how often people, I've never done YouTube live. So I thought I'd read chapter 7 live for those who are here and go through the process. Also record it and then edit it after. But yeah, to each minute of video that you guys watch, it's about an hour of editing. And so I hella feel bad for not getting back on it. And I'm only in chapter 7. I hella feel bad not getting the people what they, I did it just to document it specifically for my kids so that they, eventually one day they'll have time where they can stop scrolling and, watch their old man read or, tell stories of his own history so that they know, right? Because they're, half Tongan, half Samoan, but it's a privilege to have documentation from before anybody went over there, before reading and writing, before anybody could be influenced or split the entire kingdom or split the empire into what it is today, to be able to sit and hear what happened before all the stories. I mean, there's so many stories, and I've been watching stories and reading stories and looking online about people telling stories that don't come close to this documentation. because it turns out different. Once people start telling their own stories, whether it's Samoa or Hawaii or New Zealand, it gets cloudy. Where Mariner, before all the split happened, we can just hear from him while the entire empire was in one piece. Before France, before Britain, before Germany, before America, there was one empire, and I believe that the capital of that empire happened to be in Tonga. That's just my own opinion based on what I've been reading and the behavior of the Tongans, and the wars, and just through his travels. And there may have been people who have lived in Tonga before, or had experiences in Tonga before, but none of them were this detailed. Not that I've read anywhere where there's Baker or whoever it is that went and stayed in Mu'a. They didn't. They were there, but they just didn't live or see the gangsta of Tonga before England got over there, because it seems like the history, as far as history is concerned, Tonga didn't want to share this because it's it's a fallacy, not a fallacy. It's a freaking. I can't believe that Tonga doesn't teach the Mariner story in school, because I was asking people from Vava'u, hey, you been to Whareroa? Is there a big, giant, like a platform or a big stone that you have to move at a cemetery? And they're like, no, there's nothing like that in Whareroa. And I was like, dude, there's 200 bodies underneath uh, a slab of stone that Mariner said that they had to rig up, pulleys to pull this thing up. And he looked under there and he saw hella bodies in there of the warriors, and they were all wrapped in either ngatu or fala, and they were all just laid next to each other. And he looked in there and said that there was two new ones, from the past couple months. And I asked people in Vava'u if they've ever seen a platform like that. They said no, there's nothing like that, or they didn't notice it, or there's something growing over it, but the cemeteries are no longer there, or they're not there. And I'm telling them, oh well, I wonder if anybody could go and look for something like that near Whareroa, just to prove what Mariner was saying was right. Because just like how he was talking about the Port-au-Prince and where it was located, and said they sent divers down in there, and how Finau said if he had any idea that there was gold, or the importance of gold and gold coins and stuff, he would have moved it off of the ship, so that he could use it as bargaining and trading tools to all those who came through Tonga. But Finau didn't know what that was, and so he left it on the ship when he burned it, because they were small pieces of coin, and they didn't think that it wasn't big enough to make tools, and it wasn't big enough to make weapons. It wasn't big enough, so these giant containers of gold and silver and copper, he had no idea what to do with. So he left it on the ship, and they burned it and burned the Port-au-Prince down into the water. The stories came up, and then they had sent divers down there in the 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s, or wherever the stories go, and somebody found it, or some people think that the kingdom has it. So we don't know, but it's stuff like that, where I think there's buried monuments as far as that cemetery, that the description Mariner gives of the burial site, and nobody can tell me from Vava'u, nobody can tell me that they know where that thing is or whatever. I think it's an injustice to the history for Tonga to bury that part of the history, just to look and sound more like good people, like nice people, which friendly islands and whatnot. But I think a lot of the savage behaviors were buried by the Tongan government per se, for the purposes of looking like the best dressed, best foot forward type thing. And I think now is a good time to be like, all right, I mean, the whole world knows that we were savages, and so on and so forth, but there is no written documentation of anybody going to war except for the Tongans. There are stories. You can hear stories of people. Oh yeah. The Samoans, they were warriors, and the Hawaiians, and they have their own weapons, and the Fijians, and But there are no written like experiences. Like, oh shoot, the Maoris are going to war with whoever. There's no written person that was there that watched them fight and watched them kill and watched them. There is nothing like that I've seen or heard. All I hear is, oh, they used to be warriors, and that's general throughout the entire Pacific, where mariners privileged or are privileged to listen to mariners saying, yeah, I watched these people and they killed each other. There's a book where with the Fijian chief where he was talking about Tonga back in the day, and he was talking about the savagery of Tonga. And he said that these guys aren't regular men. His description of the Tongans, this is a Fijian chief. He said these guys aren't regular men. These guys have to be gods because there's no. It's almost as if they look forward to dying in battle. They don't have an inkling of fear because of their love for either savagery or love for war or love for battle, but their love for each other is guaranteed. One of the reasons why this chief thought that they didn't have any fear was because, yeah, I am going to put my life on the line for this guy next to me, or I'm going to die for my family, or whoever it is, or whatever it is. And he said that their greatest enemy is each other, which, according to Mariner, that's what it pretty much sounded like. Everybody had a kava ceremony in all the islands, and it seemed like all the kava ceremonies were focused or tailor made to the travelings of Finau or the king or the warriors, and all these islands have and we know that they have every island has a tradition as far as kava ceremonial, right? Anybody who knows about kava today knows that kava has always been even just social, and Mariner proves it. He says, you know what, these guys, I was keeping track of how much these guys mix, and they just mix too much. I'm not going to keep track of it anymore because they mix all the time. And the ones that they mix with or they like mixing with as far as islands is their good friends, the Fijians. They really look up to these Fijians, or at least they trust these Fijians, and they love how savage the Fijians are also. So that's their homeboys. So although they're related to all the different other islands as far as family is concerned, it seems like they're friends because they don't know where they came from. Mariner asked an old guy. He looked like he was in his 80s. Mariner said, and he said, I asked him where the Fijians came from. He said, we don't know. We were just here, and the ship came along, and they landed there, and they started living there. And that's that old guy's story from his grandfather. And if we're talking about 1805, this old man, this old man was probably born in the 1720s or 30s, and he heard it from his grandfather, who had to have been born in the 1600s. So this is all just connecting the dots as far as the stories that come from Mariner and his experience. Other than that, I thought I'd go through chapter 7, and whether it's entertaining or not, I don't think it's entertaining just to read, but recording it is and editing it. It's a process. So yeah. Oh, well, half Tongan, half Maori, long time, and right on. Te Arawa, is that pronounced Te Arawa and Tainui? I've been watching some stuff on the Cook Islands, Tokelau, because I'm listening to kava music, and a lot of the music and the pronunciations are similar. Obviously, they're going to be similar to each other. And the claim the Cook Islanders have to Tonga was interesting, and they have called themselves Tongareva people or the Lala Tonga people from that area. And Tongaleva just means ancient Tonga, the ancient South. which I thought was interesting. And so I continue to find connections of our people, but for as far as putting it all back together, like if we put all the pieces back together, for some reason, the capital of this empire seems to be Tonga. A lot of the names are spread throughout the whole, and Tonga still in the music and in if you ask the older Tongans or whatever, they still call um, Hawaii Ha'awaihi or Waihi people, the Waihi people. And Waihi just means much water between two places when they're talking about location and destination. And they still call them the Waihis. And the reason why I say as far as the capital is the fact that Ha'a it means tribe in Tonga. And there's a lot of Ha'as. There's Ha'akame, Ha'alaloha. There's a lot of tribes on the Tonga itself. Ha'apai is an island. Vava'o used to be called Ha'afuluhao, which means the tribe of many champions. And that's where, as far as the connection to Ha'amoa, because in the book, it never says Samoa, just like it never uses the K's in Hawaii where it says Kamehameha now, and how we use the island of Kauai, how all of that was spelled with the T's. It just leads it back into the definition of what the empire meant it to be. So for Ha'amoa to be called that in the Mariner's book, and to know that Waihi is what Tonga calls the people, the furthest island, which is the Ha'awaihi people. I have heard some theories on where Hawaii got its name, but Ha'awaihi is the closest theory I can come that makes sense, that connects Ha'awaihi to the Ha'amoa to Ha'apai into Tonga, as far as the naming of islands on the empire. That connection makes the most sense to me. The tribe of much water, the furthest place away. The connection between the Kanaka Maoris, right? Because just like I've determined here in the book, the Hawaiian K's and the Tongan T's are the same word, or have a lot of them are the same word, which is my curiosity as far as the island, the big island, and my conversation with the Hawaiian lady, how she said Kona meant south. And I was like, well, Kona means south, and you change that K to a T, then that's an obvious connection because Tonga means south. So all these connections and all these things lead me back, or at least connect something. And it could all just be theoretical, but there's a lot of coincidences that tie that theory together. But the Kanaka Maoli, right? So if we were to say Tangata Maori, it'd be a Tongan word, right? Now the Maoris, they call themselves the Kanaka Whenua, and Whenua, Whanua in Tongan means island or land. They share the same term, Kanaka and Maoli. Hawaii and New Zealand do, because the Maoris call themselves Maoris, but it doesn't take that big of a jump to know that Maoli and Maori probably mean the same thing. And I couldn't find a definition for either. The Hawaiians say it means ancient Hawaiian, and the Maoris say it means ancient New Zealander, but they both same those two terms. They share those two terms, Kanaka and Maori or Maoli. And I asked my dad if there's a Tongan term that means Kanaka, or that sounds like Kanaka Maori or Kanaka Maori, even though they call themselves Kanaka Whenuas. And he said, oh, you mean Tangata Maori? And I was like, what? There's a Tongan similarity? He was like, yeah, with Tangata Maori. And he was telling me this in Tongan. He was like, and Tangata Maori is the person that deals with the new life. And I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, it's in the beginning of life, when born and birth and all that, it's that person. And that's who we call the midwives, the guys who deliver, the people who deliver babies are tangata Maoris. And I was like, so could Kanaka Maori and Kanaka and Maori mean similar things if it's dealing with new beginnings or new life or new birth? And he was like, maybe, I don't know. I didn't know, I guess he didn't know that that's what those people call themselves. And then it blew my mind that that similarity even existed and that the term tangata Maori, I never heard of that tangata Maori as a Tongan term or phrase. But if you put those together, it makes freaking perfect sense to me. The Kanaka Maoris are the ones who started a new life or a new birth, a new beginning in Hawaii. And if you're a Kanaka and a Maori in New Zealand, it's whatever group or leader or whatever that who started a new beginning and new life in New Zealand. And then the question comes up, new life from what? Or from who? Right? And that's where the whole theory of, oh, okay, so if they were trying to break themselves from the capital of the empire and they wanted to start their new areas or new places in their Kanaka Maori areas, their new beginnings, then the breakoff seems to be from the capital of the empire, which theoretically leads me back to thinking, oh, so they're just trying to, just Tongans breaking away from Tongans. If the Hawaiian Ks are the Tongan Ts, who knows when and how they even changed that, and the similarities in the language there, and the definition of it. I've never heard the definition of Kanaka Maori. I've never heard the definition of Kanaka and Maori or Kanaka, besides Kanaka Whenua, if you change the K to the T, you get Tangata, which means man. You get those phrases and those terms. But as far as a definition of the term itself, I never heard until my dad brought up the term Tangata Maori, which Tongans apparently use for midwives or people who have to deal with new life or new birth or new beginnings, which then makes sense to me. So, let's see. Nice. Other than that, this is basically going to be a read, right? Because it's been a while. I haven't had anything for you guys. It's basically going to be a read. So yeah, guys can see, and I'll talk about it, and then I'll edit it for the ones who want to jump in and watch later, like my other videos. And this is and I'm still in the first book, the first volume, right? We've talked a lot about a lot of things, and I'm still in the first volume. And for those of you who don't know, this book came from a big museum type cabinet inside of the BYU Provo library, where my dad worked as an intern when he was at BYU back in the 80s. And he checked it out. And so this is an overdue book, Harold Bealey Library. And he said that he took it and they said, told him he lost it, right? Freaking liar. And they told him, oh, okay, yeah, just pay $30 to replace it. He paid $30 for history, $30 for this piece of history. And it's one of the originals, like it's the second edition, original press. So, and this is how small they used to make books. So me and my brothers ran into it like 15 years ago, and we all read it, and so thought it'd be a good thing to document it and put it out for not only our children, but for our people, and then make with what they will. As far as history, starting technically, in my own opinion and theory, 1880s is where a lot of the stories and history started coming out of Polynesia, because a lot of them were dated. 60s is exceptionally far long ago, but 1880s seems like everybody was now proficient in reading and writing, as far as all the other islands, and so everybody just created their own history, right? even though we can't avoid a lot of the similarities. Maui, right? Tangaloa, there's a few that we all share. And they all had to have come from one place or a similar source. But just to let everybody know that that's what's going on here. So I'll just go ahead and we're in chapter 7 now. So let me get this started. All right. So chapter 7. I can't remember. I don't even know where we left off in chapter 6. That's how long it's been. It's been at least, I don't know, a couple months since I pushed out chapter 6. This is chapter 7. And if you want to, this process is the reason why it's hard to come back to it because of the process. I love reading. It's the editing. But even the reading, I have to go back and look and research and whatnot just to find out what with the dictionary and everything. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 pages. That's not bad. So I'll do the live reading now, and then we will talk about it, talk as I read, and then I'll do the edited version for those who, are waiting for the video. But I thought I'd jump in and do the live. All right, so chapter 7. Crazy. I think we're in Vava'u still. And the whole Feretoa and Nyafu thing, right? War and battle. So Finau Ulukalala and his people, and this is where we all get I think a lot of people get, and I've been asked this a few times, hey, are you sure Finau Ulukalala is from Ha'apai? And I was like, that's what it says. He says when they attacked the Port-au-Prince, he's in Ha'apai, he lives in Ha'apai, he has family in Ha'apai, his yard, they describe the houses his wives were in, they give a pretty good description of that. And that's another interesting point as far as the polygamy thing, right? The plural marriage, and how Mariner was talking about, so each wife had a house. He stayed in the main house, and they were either called for or visited, but this is just my own, if I were to live the law of polygamy, I would have a house for each of them, right? This is just my own theory. I would have a house for each of them. They could raise our children because they're on the same property. The houses were all on the same lot. And each wife with the kids that he had with them stayed in those houses. And I imagine it was a big, slumber party as far as the kids going back and forth. But they were raising the children based on, the principles and the guidelines and the culture of one man. But I wouldn't want the other women to know or figure out or find out where I'm at. You know what I'm saying? So even though they all know that we're married, right, 4 or 5 wives, I would still keep it on a down low, because that's just first of all, it's nobody's business, but it just feels weird. If I were to go into one of the wives' houses and be like, hey, I guess just the thought, how the Tongan culture has a lot to do with thought and how we shouldn't put inappropriate thoughts into people's minds. That's part of that's a part of the culture. So when we raise our kids, we don't want a bad thought or an inappropriate thought to enter our daughters' minds about our sons, and vice versa. We don't want an inappropriate thought to enter our sons' minds about our daughters And so a lot of the separation happens as far as staying in certain places. Don't watch movies together. Don't listen to music together. And it may seem strict and sound too strict for, like, what are you guys doing? Like, that doesn't, now you're not going to be able to know or get to know each other. But we share rooms. So the rooms that we share in the house is the kitchen and the dining room and the living room. Other than that, we don't share any other space. All the other spaces are private. The bedrooms are private, and they were meant to stay separate. That's how hardcore the culture is, as far as we don't even want them to think inappropriate things about each other or about other people that may involve each other. Or there's something inside of that, and maybe some of you can help, as far as we don't want our female relatives to have an inappropriate thought about us or any of our male relatives. For instance, it's like Faikava, right? You go into a Faikava and you see your cousin To'aing. Automatically, you're not supposed to be there, or you shouldn't be there. She's To'aing. Because we know that there are inappropriate things that people can say, and as far as flirting with her or whatever it is, or people just say, or cussing in front of her. That should not exist, or at least in the culture, we don't want that to happen. Just leave. If you go inside a mix and you see a cousin there, just leave, because we don't want any inappropriate vibes to be between you guys, right? Where here in America, it's different. There's a lot of brothers and sisters that do things as far as the American culture, and there's a lot of inappropriate jokes, inappropriate things, the whole being too close, or public display of affection, hugging and kissing in public, or sitting, your girlfriend or whoever sitting on your lap in front of your family or siblings or whatever, where that's just a no-no for us, because how taboo we find thought to be, right? We even find thought to be taboo. And we don't want, I've had a conversation with one of my friends, as far as, and he's half Palangi, half Tongan. He's like, why do we got the boys go sit in the back, the girls sit in the front? We're not gonna get to know them, as well. We're not gonna be close to them. I even saw an old man talk about this. Like, I don't know my sister that well. Like, how well do you need to know them? Where most of the conversation about, as far as family is concerned, happens in the dining room and the kitchen and the living room. That's the appropriate places to get to know each other. And however you know each other in the dining room, in the kitchen, and the living room, that's the best you should be able to know each other. That's as close as you should be. And then at church, right? And then at school, right? I don't think, and the culture is pretty clear about it. And I grew up that way, as far as, if the house was small and there was a garage, the boys were in the garage. If the house was small and whatever, the boys were in the living room, right? We stayed in the living room sometimes, and the girls stayed in a room, or with the parents in their room. But I think, and I didn't have to try to understand or anything like that, but once I did understand, and he may have a valid point, as far as we don't get to know our sisters that well. How well do you need to know them besides knowing them in the kitchen, dining room, and living room? That's the appropriate place to know, because you're going to read scriptures, you're going to pray together, you're going to do all that stuff together. And I think that's a great way to raise kids. I raised my kids that way, as far as, and they all, even now, my daughter's 20, she just got married. If they were to watch a movie together and something inappropriate comes on, they're all looking away, because they've always looked away. Because I've taught them that it is inappropriate. You shouldn't be in the same area or have the same, have those thoughts about, even though it's other people kissing, and whatever it is, the culture is clear. And I don't think it's too strict. I think that there are things in a lot of cultures that are getting less and less strict, where there's no line, or the line keeps moving more and more inappropriate. Anyways, I don't know why I didn't even talk about that. Okay. Let's start this again. Chapter 7. So a few days after Havidi's unsuccessful attempt to secure the enemy's hogs, one of Finau's wives ran away from Nyafu. One of Finau's wives ran away from Nyafu. Look at this. Ladies and gentlemen, what do we got here? Finau Ulukalala's wife ran away from Nyafu. Did anybody have that story? Right? Let's see. Okay. All right. Being shortly missed by the rest of the women in searching for her, it was found that one of his son's wives had taken the same step. So now Finau's wife and Finau's daughter-in-law. So Finau's wife one of Finau's wives runs away, and one of his daughter-in-laws runs away from Nyafu. They're on the Vava'u now. And it was supposed they had gone together. When this was made known to the king, he left the fortress instantly, accompanied by 5 or 6 men, and directed his course along the main road leading to Feretoa, but without any success. He returned very much dejected and sent to his aunt, Toeumu, the chief of the enemy, requesting to have his wife returned, stating that it was a war between men and not women, but his remonstrances, I don't even know how to pronounce it, remonstrances had no effect. These women both labored under the jealousy and tyrannic influence of Mo'ungatupo, Finau's favorite wife. So you have one of Finau's wives and the daughter-in-law supposedly left together and ran away from Nyafu because they didn't like Mo'ungatupo. Mo'ungatupo is, now we know that that's Finau Ulukalala's favorite wife. Finau Ulukalala goes over to Toeumu, his aunt, right, the leader of Feretoa. Hey, give me those women back. My wife and my daughter-in-law, bring them back. They're not part of this war. They need to know their place, basically, is what he's saying. All right, let's see what's going on. And partly to rid themselves of this, and partly to visit and live with relations whom they had in the opposite garrison. So they have relatives. Finau's wife and daughter-in-law have relatives in Feretoa. They made their escape, and taking by road near the seashore. On the morning of their departure, Mr. Mariner was at some distance from Nyafu gathering shaddocks in a thicket. See, this is where I have to look up things. What the hell is a shaddock in a thicket? And this, what's this other word that remonstrances? Remonstrances. See, and this is the process. This is what I go through. I have to look these words up because I don't know what the hell they mean. But once I do, let's see. Once I do come up, see, so this is the process, y'all. Now you guys are seeing the process I go through when I read. Remonstrances. Remonstration, that's what it is. A form of earnest protest or objection expressing disapproval or disagreement with something. Remonstration. Where did I read that? But his remonstrances had no effect. Oh, basically, Finau went to complain, but his complaints had no effect on Toeumu to bring those women back. So Mo'ungatupo, Finau's wife, apparently is a mean lady. I guess we're assuming she's a mean lady. According to Mariner, they probably left because of the tyrannic behavior of the mother wife or the main wife. I call him the mother wife just because it's like the main mother of Finau's. And then what else was the other word of gathering? Shaddocks. Like, what is he doing gathering shaddocks, first of all? Shaddocks. And a lot of these things I've um, Pomelo, Shadrach, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Nah, just kidding. Let's see. Shadrach. What the heck? Anyway, he was gathering something in the bushes. He go to tapus and brinda. Something I don't know. All right. Okay, let's get back to it. For although his, okay, Mr. Mariner, okay. On the morning of their departure, Mr. Mariner was at some distance from Nyafu, gathering shaddocks in a thicket. For although his wound did not allow him to use any active exertions, he now and then went abroad by the help of a stick. Okay, see, I don't. Oh, he got shot in the foot. That's right. Mariner got hit in the foot with an arrow, and so he can barely walk. So now he's walking around with a cane or something, right? Okay, cool. I think I'm back on. Let me. I hope you don't need a formal invitation of like your ancestry or the spirit of God, you know, the spirit to be here to help inform and teach and stuff. Like, I hope there's no necessity to, you know, say a prayer of that type, even though I'm all for it. Okay, anyway, so Mariner's injured and he's walking around with a stick in Nyafu. Being up in a tree, he heard a rustling. What's he doing up in a tree? He heard a rustling noise in the bushes below, and directing his attention to the spot, was surprised to see one of Finau's wives. Prompted by curiosity, he came quickly down and, seizing her by the arm, inquired what caused her to stray so far from the fortress and to expose her person and her life as the insults and cruelty of the enemy. So Mariner's basically saying, finds one of Finau's wives and says, where are you going? You're too far from the fortress. The enemy's going to catch you and they're going to do something bad to you. You know what I mean? Plus, it's probably easier to do something bad to them back in the day because, you know, they weren't wearing anything up top. Plus, the skirts were probably made out of grass. You know what I mean? It's easy. You can probably slide right up in there. All right. She replied that she had only come out for a walk and was going shortly to return. She was just out for a walk. To this account, he objected that it was too far and too dangerous a walk for her to take alone, with the risk of meeting Moteita and his followers, who often concealed themselves in those woods, and declared his suspicion that she intended to run away. So Mariner's saying, Moteita's out here. He's always out here. He's the sneaky guy that goes out at night and, you know, tries to murder people. And then Mariner tells her, are you trying to sneak away? Right? And she immediately fell on her knees, clasped her hands, and begged and entreated most earnestly that he would not prevent her flight from the dominion of tyranny to the bosom of her relations. So he's saying, look, don't stop me, please. I'm escaping tyranny. right? Which he's talking about Mong, what's her name? Finau's Mong Atupo. Mong Atupo. She's tyrannically ruling over us wives, and I want to go back. I want to go to Feridol where all my family's at. That's where my relations are. This is crazy. Nobody knew this about Finau and how Finau had these. Just the thought, if I were to have to live the law of polygamy, I would make sure she is a nice person. I would make sure the main one is a nice one, right? Remember how Jacob chose his wives, right? He chose to be with Rachel, and then this is Abraham's brother. Jacob wanted Rachel, and then Jacob went over to Rachel's dad. Rachel's dad said, "Well, Leah's not married. You gotta, you gotta work for me for 7 years. Get Leah first because she's the oldest. Culturally, she's supposed to be married, and then after that, you can work 7 years, Rachel, and then right, Jacob worked for these two of them, I think, different women before he actually chose Rachel. But Rachel was his chosen main wife, even though he married Rachel's older sister. And I'm thinking, if we were to choose wives, like say Finau, how was it done or whatever, I would make sure, because they said inside of the community, they made sure that it was a support group, that the women lived in a support group, or that's what the women were to each other. They worked together. That I could trust, or that I would hope women could trust, that choose a good person to wife and then let her build herself a support group, which is the description that Mariner was talking about as far as the wives are concerned. But in this case, Mongatupo's tyrannical, which means I don't know how you would end up in a tyrannical relationship if you could choose your own group to join, right? If you were to look at a group of women with a man, you'd be able to tell who and how he is by the women, and you'd be able to tell who and how the women are by the man, it would seem. But she may have made a wrong decision, or it's one of those where a father would give away a daughter just to be tie himself to, like they did in the old days, kingdoms marry each other, kingdoms, and for power and political purposes. Anyways, one of them ain't having it. Still hasn't said her name yet. Prompted by curiosity, came quickly and seized the arm, inquiring what her cause. Okay, we already read that. Okay, shortly. Oh, so she said she was on a walk and she was going to go back shortly. To this account, he objected that it was too far and too dangerous for a walk. Oh, I read that already. She fell on her knees and said how much he hated the tyrannical behavior of the main wife, the mother wife, and appealed most pathetically to his own feelings and affections towards his mother. So Mariner is feeling for her. He has empathy for her, or whatever relatives he might have in his own country, and representing how hard and cruelly severe it would be for anyone to prevent him flying to them if it were otherwise in his power. So he's basically saying, I know what it's like to live under tyranny. I know what it's like to live, enslaved or in bondage. And now he's thinking, you know what? I feel you. I know what you're going through. He's probably going to let her go. Let's see. Being moved by the earnestness of her manner and the unfortunate circumstances of her situation, he raised her up and promised not to interfere in her escape, nor to divulge the matter to anyone. There you go. She's on her knees. He lifts her up. All right, I'm not going to let anybody know. Go ahead, go to your family. Because Mariner's saying, I want to go to my family. So, of course, I know how you feel. You know what I mean? So, instead of doing what probably is the right thing to do, which is, you got to go back to your husband. This is Tonga. This is the culture. You're stuck. he found it himself to be like, nah, you know what? I feel you. You're in bondage. You hate it. You don't want it. You want to go home. So do I. And lets her go and says, all right, I'm not going to tell anybody. Um, and gave her full liberty to proceed whichever way she thought proper. So this is crazy, dude, because Mariner is basically giving her an opportunity that he wish he had. You know what? Jump in, go, wherever you want to go, and be free. Although Mariner's, privileged in as far as being in, the Finau Ulukalala son, adopted son, he also in deep down inside and in the back of his mind is like, well, I'm still, freak. He got shot in the foot with an arrow. I almost got shot with an arrow before this war started, on the beach when they were feilocking before the Tau, right? He had to go to Nuku'alofa and go war there. Like, there's a lot of things that I'm sure he wants to leave at this point, right? And this is why I understand, as far as when John Martin said, during the times that, he got back home in England when he was 19, during this time, a lot of the kids were graduating from high school, going to college, getting married, traveling the world, and everything. Mariner was at home and he was content, right? He had a peaceful, calm temperament. He didn't want to do anything. After 4 years of this, you can understand that, oh, yeah, he lived a life. He lived 10 lifetimes watching people die and having to kill people, right? And I know that's a military thing people, go through, but he had to live a life where it was always on your toes and head on a swivel type life for 4 years, since he was a teenager all the way up till now. His age group is getting married and newly stuff and these new adventures and whatnot, where when he got home, he wore his tapa and would just be around just at home, chilling, probably reading and whatnot. But after reading these experiences, you kind of understand why he ended up that way. Finau had for a long time past entertained the idea of seizing upon several of the enemy's women. Finau stole women who were in the habit of assembling at a certain part of the inlet. Okay, I'll have to show the inlet, to gather shellfish, and now his wife had run away. He was more than ever encouraged to do this by way of retaliation upon Toiumu for her detention. So apparently, Finau, there's an inlet somewhere near Feretoa where the women would go gather shells on the beach, where Finau would go and kidnap some of those women from Feretoa. So straight up. And now he feels like it's happening to him, or he feels that they're perpetrating the same action against him. And now he's mad at Umu for that happening, which he didn't even investigate to find out. No, this is one of your wives, and he's not going to ask. It's not going to matter, right? Because it's his wife. It's my wife. He's thinking that they came and kidnapped her. He doesn't know that, no, she left on her own, and the only one that knows is Mariner, right? Because Mariner's the only one that caught her. Okay, so he wants to retaliate against his aunt Toiumu in Feretoa because he believes that they kidnapped his wife just like he's kidnapped their women, which that's not fair. Finau, do unto others as other one to you. This would, whatever. The place where they procured this sort of fish was upon a shelf of rocks about 1.5 feet deep at low water. So there's 12 inches of water in the area that they're in, that ran across the inlet at no great distance from Feretoa. So they're near Feretoa. They're going to get some fish and whatever they're collecting, these women, shells and fish, and they were in that area at this point in time. Upon this shelf, they were accustomed to fish every day while wading through the water. So they go around Shells and fish. Okay. On these occasions, several men of their own party had frequently alarmed them by rushing out upon them, pretending to be the enemy. So these women would do this in Feredoa, and then some of their own guys would come and scare them, pretending to be the enemy, and had repeated this so often that at length they only laughed at the joke and ridiculed the idea of running away. So it scared them originally. At first, when they first started doing this, it first scared them. But then eventually they did it so much, it was like the boy who cried wolf. Now they're just playing, right? And so they don't think that men from Nyafu are actually going to come out and attack and kidnap them. One evening, a party of Finau's men, who had formed themselves for the express purpose of making an attack upon these women, set out in a canoe and sailed to a part of the island where they could land unobserved and proceed to the spot where they were fishing without any danger of discovery on account of the high bushes that were there in abundance. So Finau had men, went around the area, hid in bushes, right, while these women were picking up shells and picking up fish, and now they're about to attack. So it's obvious what's going to go through the women's mind. Oh, it's the boys just playing again. They're just messing around, right? Being arrived on the spot at an appointed signal, they rushed upon the women, who immediately set up a hearty laugh. Right? So the men attack and the women laugh because they don't think that it's them. They think that it's their brothers or their husbands or boyfriends or whatever. Taking them for their old friends, so fond of a joke, but when they saw 2 or 3 knocked down with clubs, they ran away as fast as their strength and the resistance of the water would let them, and the men after them in full pursuit. So the men attack. The women thought, it's those guys playing around again, until a couple of them were knocked down with clubs. I don't know why you would attack and knock them out with clubs. Well, I guess it's wartime, right? But if I saw a bunch of beautiful women, and these are Vava'u women, let's just say, right? And they're out there in the ocean. And this obviously before, because Meredith said they did the breasts weren't sexual to Tonga or to Polynesia, right? Just back then, in those days. And they're picking up, so... Yeah, I don't know why I brought that up. What is the point of that? Oh, anyways, it was just, beautiful women just everywhere. I don't even know if that's a good point. Being attacked and kidnapped from the water. And he said that the water is a foot tall, so they're running and as fast as they could, but you have men chasing women. So it's obvious what's going to happen. Not all of them are going to get away. There were 30 of them, of which number 5 were killed and 13 taken prisoners, the other 12 escaping safe to the opposite shore. For whatever purpose, Feretoa and the Finau guys thought that they should kill these women. That doesn't make any sense to me. But they actually killed 5 and captured, what? There's 30 of them. They killed 5 and captured 13 of these women. Took them back. In this affair, the wife of Finau's son was very nearly taken. Oh, so Finau's daughter-in-law was among these women. She ran so exceedingly swift through the water, knee-deep, and the young chief in pursuit of her exerted himself so much to overtake her. So the guy who was chasing Finau's daughter-in-law ran out of energy. Like, that's especially because I'm sure she had high, her adrenaline was high probably, and she wasn't about to get taken back. Could you imagine what would have happened to her if they took her back? I wonder if any of that is even in here. Although he was near enough to knock her down with his club, he actually fell through fatigue. I don't think he wanted to hit her because it's Finau's daughter-in-law. So he was just trying to catch her and she got away. It must, however, be said in favor of the chief that the weight of his club was a great disadvantage, whereas his lovely fugitive ran without any encumbrance, for in her endeavor to quicken her pace, her ngatu dress became loose and fell from her waist. So Mariner's crediting this guy because his club was heavy and he was close enough to hit her, but he didn't. She was cool because now she's running through the water naked because her ngatu fell off, and she was desperate to get away. She wasn't going to get caught. This was the only time that she looked back from a sense of modesty to see if it was recoverable, but she was under the necessity of pursuing her flight without it. So she did look back, like she was running, and she did look back to see, if the ngatu was close enough to grab, but she had run too fast, too far, and now it's gone, so she's just going to run naked the rest of the way. The 13 prisoners were conducted to Nyafu, though Finau had given orders that all that should be taken should be killed on the spot. I don't know why Finau would order just to kill whoever on the spot, especially women. Of course, we've already talked about how that's part of the culture anyway, right? You don't want to leave anybody alive because that just means that you're leaving enemies alive if you leave anybody alive. We talked about that when they went and killed Tu'aho. When Finau and Tupo went and killed Tu'aho, they made sure nobody was left alive because of retaliation, in fear of retaliation. So, okay. The captors saved their lives, however, partly from motives of humanity and partly from those of profit, as they could employ them in making ngatu. Oh, okay, so these guys saved the lives of these women, Mariner says, for humanity purposes, right? They didn't want to be cruel to them. And now we got new workers. We got workers. They can make ngatu. Interesting. When they arrived at Nyafu, a strong dispute arose between several relations of the prisoners and those who had taken them. Okay, now they're fighting amongst each other. The former arguing that they had a claim to the women, what? According to the old Tongan custom, which decrees that all persons shall be in the service of their older superior relations if those relations think proper to employ them. Oh, some of these women were related to the guys in Nyafu. So the family members are telling them, all right, these are our relatives. Like anybody who's related to these women, they do what we say, right? The captors, on the other hand, the one who actually got them, strenuously grounded their claims on the right of conquest. The guys who brought them say, no, they're ours. They're our property. We get to tell them what to do. Now their cousins are saying, nah, we get to tell them to do. They're our freaking family, right? Which is, I mean, they both have a point at this point. Like, yeah, they went and brought them. But if I was on the opposite side of my relatives and I saw my girl cousins show up, nah, they're gonna come with me because I'm gonna take care of them and I'm gonna care for them. They're my cousins, right? The guys who brought them, I'd be down to fight them. Like, no, all right. Well, then me and my cousins are all gonna die because you're not gonna tell them what to do. You don't love them like I do, right? You're not gonna care for them. You're just gonna use them for whatever you want to use them for, but they're my relatives, right? That's what's going on. The dispute ran very high, and they referred it to Finau, who replied that he should not interfere in it, and they might settle it themselves as well as they could, for they had no right to bring the prisoners there to create disturbances, but should have dispatched them according to his orders. Finau said, hey, leave me out of this. You guys take care of it the best you guys can, because why did you bring them back? I told you to kill them when you met them or when you got them, right? So Finau is like bringing himself out of it. He's like, nah, that's not my problem. Why did you bring them back? Now you guys are fighting over this, right? So Finau is just trying to stay out of it, which he's right because he did tell them to kill them when they got him. So Finau has a point too, right? At length, he condescended to give his opinions that the most proper method would be, under the circumstances, to cut each woman in two and give one half to her relations. Oh boy, we got King Solomon here. And the other to the captor, right? The King Solomon's solution, right? Of the two mothers fighting over the baby. He said, cut the baby in half and you guys take one each. And the mother whose baby it really was said, no, don't cut it. She can have them, right? That's what and I don't know where you got this story from. Because they don't have scripture or anything. It just sounds like a wise thing to do, right? Or at least to keep me out of it, you guys, do whatever it is. The affair, however, was amicably settled without having recourse to such bloody measures, some being given up to their relatives and others restrained or retained upon terms mutually agreed to all parties. So there you go. Some of the women were given back to their relatives, and some made a deal with the captors to something agreeable, which, they made a deal, whatever that deal was. About this time, the two long-expected canoes arrived from Ha'apai, laden with provisions, having been detained partly by contrary winds and partly by people going to visit their relatives at different islands. So this Ha'apai ship that they sent to bring resources, food, and whatever it is that they wanted to bring, they're supposed to go get. They're saying, yeah, the wind to make us take our time, or the reason why it took long is because of the winds, and plus these guys wanted to go stop by a couple of other islands to visit family members. It has already been mentioned more than once that places which have been consecrated, either by express declaration or by the burial of great chiefs, are forbidden to be the scene of war, and that it would be highly sacrilegious to attack an enemy or spill blood within their confines. I think we talked about how sacred ground works in Tonga as far as the ancient Tonga chiefs and kings and whatnot. The cemetery, you're not allowed, even if you're enemies. If you meet on the sacred grounds of a cemetery or a place of burial, you aren't allowed to be enemies. You aren't allowed to fight. And everybody kept that taboo, because anybody who does act or react on those sites, they believe that something bad would happen to them, their families, and their posterity. So the circumstances, however, occurred a few days after the dispute about the female prisoners. The particulars of it are as follows. Balavali, there's a guy named Balavali, brother of the warrior Havili, went out one day on a foraging party with 6 men in 2 small canoes and landed near a consecrated enclosure called Nakao. So so these names, probably I'll have to look this up, see where it's at. One of the most fertile places in the whole island. So Pahlavi, brother of Havili, took some dudes and they went with small island to this place, Nakao. Here they met with 4 of the enemy, who, perceiving their inferiority, made an endeavor to get into the consecrated place, where they would have been perfectly safe. So these guys go and they see some of these warriors go and they see people who are of a lesser in the hierarchy of Tonga, and so in order to be safe, they ran into the cemetery because they know that nobody can attack or be attacked as long as they're on sacred ground, right? Because they knew they were inferior and they were afraid of what the superiors would do. And because they were afraid of that, they said, all right, let's run into the cemetery because they can't tell us what to do or kill us over there, right? Pahlavi, however, seeing their intention, got between them and the fencing when one of the enemy made a bold push to pass his antagonist to scramble over the reed work, and had actually got one leg over when Pahlavi struck him a furious blow on the head and felled him dead within the place. So this guy who knew the rules tried to break in. Pahlavi jumps in front of him, and he wrestles with him, right, and gets his foot into, breaks some of the bamboo and gets his foot inside. So he should be safe and protected. Pahlavi nonetheless backs up and strikes him and kills him, right? So technically, yeah, Pahlavi made a mistake. But he knew what the guy was trying to do. He was trying to run into safety, which is crazy that, now I'm going to run into the cemetery because they can't kill me there. But the strength of how their belief system, right? The taboo. When it's tapu, it's tapu. You know how Mariner said, tapu means sacred. He's just saying it means sacred, or the sacred things. But he also said, but tapu to these guys is an action, right? It's a verb. It doesn't just mean sacred. If people in Tonga were to live a tapu life or tapu behavior, you can actually see, oh no, they actually believe that this thing is sacred by the way that they're acting. They don't just say, oh, that's sacred over there, this is sacred over here. No, they actually will not break a tapu. That's the difference between tapu and just sacred, which is just a definition of something important religiously or otherwise, right? Seeing now what he had done, he was struck with fear. Oh, Pahlavi, okay, Pahlavi dropped his balls. So now Pahlavi now sees, oh, his leg is inside of the cemetery, and now he's scared because, oh, I killed him while he was on sacred ground. And ran away to the canoes, followed by his men. So now Pahlavi, the superiors, right? Even though those guys were inferior beings, he killed the guy that was on sacred land, on sacred property, which means he's the one that gets cursed. Runs with his men back to the canoes and they bounce. All right, let's see. As soon as he arrived at the fortress, he communicated to Finau what had passed, saying in his defense that he was so eager in pursuit as to be out of all self-command. He's basically telling Finau, I was chasing him so hard and so fast that I couldn't control myself. I couldn't stop myself. I was in motion, too far in motion when this happened. After explaining to Finau what happened, the king immediately ordered Kava to be taken to the priest of his own tutelar god, that the divinity might be consulted as to what atonement was proper to be made for so heinous a sacrilege. Finau tells him, go take Kava to the priest right now and see if he can eliminate or erase this curse, right? Of this Pahlavi guy. The priest, being inspired, made answer that it was necessary a child should be strangled to appease the anger of the gods. Say what? The priest said, we have to strangle a child if we're going to please the gods in order for us to forgive what you did. That's the atonement, right? That you have to go on it. So we have a footnote here that says, on such occasions, the child of a male chief is always chosen as being worthier than others. That sound familiar, right? A child of a male chief is more worthy than others. That's the sacrifice they use, right? It's almost like God using Jesus Christ, the only begotten Son, because there is nobody worthier, right? Sound familiar? Or it sound like there's, not that these guys even are Christian or know anything about it, but it's the same type of mentality, interestingly enough. And a child by an inferior female attendant, because it is not a chief. What? On such occasion, the child of a male chief is always chosen as being worthier than others, and a child by an inferior female attendant, because it is not a chief. Only those children being chiefs whose mothers are chiefs. Oh. So it has to be a chief, right? Somebody who's worthy but their mother has to be a chief also. So it's son of a chief, but their mother has to be a chief also, or come from the bloodline of the higher ups hierarchy, or the Akis, right? Which are the higher ups. Only those kids can we use to strangle to atone for the sins of this guy, Pahlavi, who killed somebody on sacred ground. Those are the only type of babies we can use. The chiefs then held a consultation and came to the determination of sacrificing a child of Tupoto'a. Ooh, Tupoto'a, bro. By one of his female attendants. Oh, okay, so one of Tupoto'a's wives, basically, female attendants, that's what he's talking about. It's going to be one of his sons from her, right? One of hers. On such occasions, the child of a male chief is always chosen as being worthier. Okay, so this is what he's talking about as far as the male chiefs, but the wives. So the Bodoas and the girl has to be a chief too. It's their son, right? The Bodoa was present and gave his consent that his child, about 2 years old, should be immolated to appease the anger of the gods and turn aside their vengeance for the sacrilegious crime committed. So Tupoto'a was there, sends for one of his sons, his wife's son, right? One of the wives, one of the attendants, which I'm assuming is somebody who's also covenanted, right? Because they covenant to each other. There really is no marriage ceremony throughout the book. It's always been they're covenanted to each other and they claim those covenants are strong enough to be wives and husbands. It's one of his attendants, covenanted to him, their children, 2-year-old boy, bring him, we're gonna sacrifice him, or, right, for the atonement of, damn, Pahlavi. You freaking idiot, Pahlavi. The child was accordingly sought for, but its mother, thinking her child might be demanded, had concealed it. Oh, so the mom hid the baby. Being at length found by one of the men who were in search of it, he took it up in his arms, smiling with delight at being taken notice of. Damn. The 2-year-old baby. One of the guys went in to get him. He picked him up and he said the baby smiled up at him as he picked him up to take him. I just noticed him. Which is what babies do, right? So we about to see some human sacrifices in Tonga. Its poor mother wanted to follow, but was held back by those about her. On hearing its mother's voice, it began to cry. But when it arrived at the fatal place of execution, it was pleased and delighted with the band of ngatu that was put round its neck, and looking up to the face of the man who was about to destroy it, displayed in its beautiful countenance. Ooh, shit! A smile of ineffable pleasure. Such a sight inspired pity in the breast of everyone, but veneration and fear of the gods was sentiment superior to every other, and its destroyer could not help exclaiming as he put on the fatal bandage, Oyawe Shivare. Poor little innocent. Oh boy. 2 men then tightened the cord by pulling at each end, and the guiltless and unsuspecting victim was quickly relieved of its painful struggles. Go down. Oh. They bring a baby. They bring this baby, right? This baby, pick him up. He's smiling. The mom cries. The baby's crying as they take him away. They bring him to the place. Rep of Ngatu, even the men who had to kill him, right? Who had to, what did he say? exclaiming, Oya, where's Ivade? Right? Vade Vade means, that's what we call little kids. Sivade. Oya, where's Ivade? But, as it says right here, but veneration and fear of the gods was a sentiment superior to every other. They feared God more, right? They feared God more than taking the life of this baby, even though they exclaimed, oh my gosh, how could we, right? As two men are pulling at this ngatu, and the baby obviously probably couldn't scream or anything, but if they were merciful, they would have done it quickly. But this is the sacrifice they had to make, them fearing God more than anything else. So there you go. All because Pahlavi killed somebody who was through the bamboo reeds on the cemetery, on sacred ground, technically, right? Yeah, some of this stuff is emotional, man. Reading through it, like, damn, this is my people? Yeah, this is our people. And, it's the past and it's gone, but why would you want to bury these truths, right? Like, this stuff happened. Why would you want to bury these truths? Even if we don't need to know it, like, why wouldn't you want to know it, right? That the bloodline of Tongans come through with this type of information, right? Like, we have the Bible and all of that. There's a whole bunch of stuff in the Bible that they're like, oh, damn, your people have been through there, done that, been there, done that, and all that. It's like, yeah. But it doesn't negate the fact that, man, history is good. It's a good read no matter what, right? All right. And so their fear of God superseded their love for the child, even though the men who choked it or strangled it exclaimed and cried, just like I cried, grown men crying, right? And I'm just reading it, right? The body was then placed upon a sort of hand barrow, supported upon the shoulders of 4 men, and carried in a procession of priests, chiefs, and matapures, clothed in mats with wreaths of green leaves round their necks. Okay, the sea leaves or the ife leaves, the chiefs, the priests, all this is a religious thing, and it's done by the highest, right? Any kind of death is done by Tonga, who is an Aki, right? Or the Akis themselves. That's why they call funerals and death and stuff me'afaka Aki. This is the Aki's responsibility, right? So the Akis are taking care of this because they're the ones that get to deal with the things of God. These are the Akis that are doing this. So when you hear me'afaka Aki, this is what they're talking about. Matapures, chiefs and priests. In this manner, it was conveyed to various houses consecrated to different gods, before each of which it was placed on the ground, all the company sitting behind it, except one priest who sat beside it and prayed aloud to the God that he would be pleased to accept of his sacrifice as the atonement for the heinous sacrilege committed, and that punishment might be accordingly be withheld from the people. So they believe that because of what Pahlavi did, all the people's cursed. They chose a sacrifice. They took it with one priest sitting next to him praying, and 4 about, just so that they could avoid the curse that who knows when that started, right? Or when this superstition started, right? For them to have all these different things, right? Do not kill. That was tapu. Do not kill on cemetery, on sacred ground, right? And if we do, we have to send a child as a sacrifice to atone for the sin so that the people aren't cursed. Where did they get all this, right? Where's the proof? That's even though that it's an old thing or whatever. It's interesting to find out where they even came up with it, right? For them to live so strict and tapu according to these words. When this had been done before all the consecrated houses of the fortress, the body was given up to its relations to be buried in the usual manner. I don't know why my freaking nose is so itchy. So there were houses dedicated to gods that they had to do prayers in front of to them for them to accept the sacrifice, and then after that, then they gave the baby back to his relatives, and then they took care of it and buried it properly. About 4 or 5 days after the above horrible immolation, can you imagine what Mariner was thinking? Like, you guys are going to kill a child because he killed somebody on the cemetery? Can you imagine what a guy from England who doesn't believe any of this, right? And these guys aren't going to, they're absolutely stuck on it. No, it's going to happen, right? Can you imagine what Mariner is thinking? Like, no, nothing's, like, he was probably thinking, nothing's going to happen to you. Like, it's okay. He killed him, and yeah, it may be a cemetery, but you don't have to kill this. Like, he was watching a whole bunch of savages live the way they live, and nothing was going to change their mind type thing, right? After 4 or 5 days after the above horrible immolation, the same Palavari, so Palavari, his name is Palavari, was killed in a skirmish with the enemy. Ooh. Uh-oh. I take that back. That might... Palavari was killed in the skirmish, so he went towards the enemies and died. He went out again on a foraging excursion with about 30 or 40 men. Palavari must have been a G for 30 or 40 guys to be following him, but Palavari led 30 or 40 men out, not professed warriors, but men on whom courage and honor and no reliance could be placed. Oh, so just a bunch of dudes, right? Palavari just went out with a bunch of 30 or 40 dudes. They met with a smaller body of the enemy, but who were all staunch fighting men. And in a very short time, Palavari's men turned about to run away. You know, when Leonidas said, what is your occupation or whatever? What is your, I can't remember what he said. And they're like, oh, I'm a farmer, I'm a teacher or whatever. And then he turns to his men and he said, Spartans. I can't remember what he said. What is your, it's not occupation. And then they all go, ooh, right? Like, this is what we do. Palavari went out with a bunch of farmers and teachers and whatevers, Mariner says, and they run into a small group of guys whose occupation was war. And eventually, Palavari's guys start running away, right? He vainly endeavored to rally them, and facing about to set them the example, he received several wounds and fell. You're not going to teach them the day of how to go to war, right? Palavari turns like, hey, let's stand. Let's go, right? You're not going to tell a bunch of guys that don't go to war, hey, let's go to war. Not today. You know, they should have been training longer than that. So they bounced. Palavari is getting hit with clubs and whatever, and he falls down. At this moment, his men also faced round, and seeing the perilous situation of their chief, became animated with courage. Oh, they became courageous, and drove the enemy a few paces back, while 2 or 3 picked him up and carried him to the fortress. Oh, Palavari got lucky. So some of his men came back, fought off the guys that he was fighting, just enough for a couple of guys to grab him and take him back. So there were down guys, apparently. When they arrived, they proceeded to take out 4 spears which had pierced him. Golly, Palavari. But he desired them to desist from so useless a task, as he was certain the gods had decreed his death as a punishment for his late offense. See? Then this happens, and it solidifies the superstition, right? Because they're trying to pull out 4 spears from his body, and they're like, no, 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 forget it. It's useless, right? I already know what I did. This is my punishment, right? So if that's the case, then why'd they kill the baby? Oh, that's to protect the people. Never mind. Okay. Now I remember what it was for. But Palavali's saying, all right, now forget it. Don't pull the spears. There's 4 spears in me. Don't pull them out. I'm about to pay the price. Which is a warrior mentality thing to even say. This too was the general opinion of the people and was the subject of their conversation long afterwards, contributing to spread a considerable gloom throughout the garrison. So everybody agreed. Yep, you're right. This is what happened. We believe it. You're dying because of what you did. Yes, we believe that. And throughout the garrison, people are talking about it. Yeah, see, Sean? Bastante. Right? They already knew. We knew that was going to happen. Pahlavi died about half an hour after he was brought home. 30 minutes later, Pahlavi died. Finau already began to grow tired of the war. It was a kind of conflict not suited to his genius. He loved, rather, a few hard-fought engagements and a speedy conquest. So this isn't what Finau's used to. He's like Nuku'alofa, right? They went, they set up the cannons and the whatever outside on the beach, fired in for a few hours, and then it was over, right? That's what Finau wants to do. That's what he likes to do. Remember when he went with Tupo Niwa, his brother, and killed Tuku'aho? Boom, in and out. And then they took whoever was with them and they went back, fight, in and out, right? That's what Finau's used to. But in this case, now they're living there, right? And they're just fighting. It's just like one town going to war with the other. There's no more real attacks as far as battle and conquest is concerned. It's just 2 villages fighting. The enemy showed no disposition to come forth from their stronghold and attack him. So Feretoa doesn't care. Toi Umu doesn't care. And he had found by experience that even the guns produced no sensible effect upon their fortification situated upon an eminence and defended by walls of clay. So they knew that because Feretoa is made out of clay and the guns and the cannons can't penetrate it, they're no longer scared of the guns. The Feretoa guys aren't. And Finau is realizing that now, right? Mr. Mariner could easily have devised a method to set the enemy's fortress on fire, but he considered Toi Umu's cause quite as just as that of Finau. And although the latter was his friend, he had more than half assisted in the assassination of a man admirable character, Tupo Niwa, who was also Mr. Mariner's friend. Besides, he did not choose to be the means of dealing out destruction upon a number of innocent women and children. So Mariner is saying, I had an idea to set it on fire because the bamboo can still catch fire and everything inside of the fortress of Feretoa can catch fire. But I wasn't about to help Finau. And he's saying he considered Toi Umu's cause quiet as just. So as just as Finau. So he's saying, I agree with Toi Umu too. Like she's protecting herself. So I'm not going to give Finau an idea to burn it down if I agree with her. Not only that, but Finau was involved with killing Tupo Niwa. That was my friend, right? Even though it was his brother and him and Tupo Toa had a thing going against Tupo Niwa, but Mariner saying he was my friend too. So these are good people. So Mariner is basically saying, I'm kind of on their side because they're doing it for righteous purposes, whereas Finau is just a conquest, bloodthirsty warmonger, as we've kind of got through some of this reading, all right? He's talking about Finau, okay? Finau, he heartily wished for a peace, but he did not choose that his wish should be known, lest it should be attributed to fear or any other unworthy motive. So Finau is saying, I want peace, but I don't want to tell everybody I want peace, because then they're going to think I'm weak. They're going to think that, I've dropped my balls or whatever it is. I don't want to sound like that, but I do want peace. So Finau wants peace. But he doesn't want it to be attributed to fear or him being an unworthy motive. Like they came here and now they're saying, oh, I don't want them to think that we came here for free. All right, we came here for. I do want them to think that I am brave and we're here for righteous purposes. And the difficulty was to accomplish this. So he's saying, and I want them to think that it was too hard, like it was too difficult for us to do, right? But he wants peace. He was, however, by no means deficient in policy, and he soon thought of a method. So now he's coming up with a way to fix things. From time to time, he held secret conferences with the priests, chiefly either upon religious subjects or upon political matters as connected with the will of the gods. So often Finau would meet with the priests to see what the gods want, right? And in secret conferences. He spoke of his determination to remain at Vava'u and prosecute the war till his enemies were destroyed. Oh, okay. So he does want to go to war till they're destroyed. Then on a sudden, as if his heart for a moment relented, he painted in the most striking colors the evils of war. So Finau knew the evils of war coming into this, because Mariner is saying he's describing how terrible war really is. But at the same time, we also know the necessity, but it wasn't necessary here, right? The Umu and the Vava'u people were living good. Why would he do this conquest unless he wanted Vava'u for himself? And how sorry he was that the necessity of the case obliged him to punish his rebellious subjects with so dire an evil. Finau basically saying that, it's war. Basically just making an excuse, some things just had to happen. There was a lot of casualties and unnecessary deaths, but this just had to happen. A lot of this had to happen. He then represented in the most lively colors the blessings of peace, and on the side of the prospect touched his heart, his hearers so with the beauty of the description that they entreated him to endeavor to make a peace. So basically, Finau Ulukalala describes the beauty of peace, the beauty of probably growing and building and joy and family. I mean, if you wanted to paint peace or put into the imagination of a man or people the definition of peace and how it feels, right? You can almost describe joy in the same way, describing peace. Finau does that, and the listeners are like, yeah, that sounds good, man. Peace and joy sound like a really good idea, right? He then pretended to be inexorable, but always threw in something in favor of the Vava'u people, so that the priests at length thought there was no question at all about the propriety and honor of making a peace, and that it was their duty to persuade him to do it. Basically, Finau is saying that all these people deserve to be here. We all deserve to be here. We all deserve to live in peace, right? Trying to make sure that the priests and everybody is convinced of what he thinks and feels should exist here in Vava'u. When they were inspired, they had the same sentiment, and of course, they considered it to be the sentiment of the gods and represented it to him as such, while he, pretending to submit only because it was the divine will, left the matter entirely to them to negotiate. Finau is a bad guy. Finau is basically convincing the priests and the Madapudas and whoever's there, we need peace. Peace is beautiful. Peace is love and all of this. We need all this. To convince all of them that that's what he should do and that's what he wants to do. But Mariner is insinuating that he wants them to go over and promote that to the Feretoa people, which is another militant-minded strategy at this point, because he convinced the best of the people of Tonga, the priests and the Matabudes, or whoever it was who do the spiritual people, the people of God, convinced them that that's what he wanted, just so that they can go to Feretoa and preach that to them, to convince them, right? Not knowing that he lied to them, so he's finding another way to get into Feretoa. Seems like he's trying to destroy them still. But you see what I mean by, and Tonga has always praised, they have always praised Finau Ulukalala for his greatness. But if we come down to the details of Finau Ulukalala, this is what it is. He's using the priests to promote peace and joy to Feretoa, while he has other ulterior motives, seems like, right? We're about to find out. So he wanted them to go negotiate with the Feretoa people. And if they succeeded, it would afford him, he said, at least one great gratification, the opportunity of again renewing his friendship with his aunt, Toiumu, and paying her that respect with her superior relationship required. Man, Finau's, he's brilliant in the art of war. It's a genius move, because you're using the Tongan culture and behavior, using the gods and the priests to push peace and love and joy, and probably how they can promote that and sell that to the Feretoa guys while he stands behind them with a club ready to kill. As a war person, as a military person, he's in the right place at the right time, right? But as a friend and as a person of real peace and joy, yeah, he's an asshole, man. There's no way around him being a warmonger. You know what I mean? Bloodthirsty warmonger, conquering guy. So I don't know what totally to make of him, even though we have a lot of facts about him through Mariner's descriptions. We're about to find out more and more about him as we go through this. The day after the last conference, so they're having conferences, right? The day after the last conference, the priests accordingly dressed themselves in mats. Remember what that is? The sanctity of dressing in mats, and how if you dress in mat, you're not in war, you're dressing like as if you're going to go see God. With wreaths of green leaves round about their necks as tokens of humility, not towards the enemy, but the gods, as fulfilling a commission sacred to its nature. I've given a description on how Mariner said, as long as you wear mats and leaves around your neck, you are at peace. You are coming in as a representative of God, or you want somebody to defend you as somebody who's coming to see God. That's how they're dressed, these priests, now that Finau has told them, yeah, let's live in peace. But the gods, as fulfilling a commission sacred in its nature, thus equipped, they set out on their way to Feretoa, right? They're dressed like this, going to Feretoa. In the meantime, Finau gave orders that none of his men should commit any act of hostility, for as the gods had admonished him to endeavor to make a peace, and the priests were actually fulfilling that endeavor, Any act of hostility might defeat their purpose. Okay, so he sends the priests. Nobody, no warriors, nobody. We don't want nobody doing anything while the priests go and negotiate peace, right? But we kind of all know what Finau has in mind. The priests went 4 or 5 different times to hold conferences with the chief of Feretoa before they could bring about a reconciliation. So it wasn't all at once, right? It says they went a few times to have conferences over there. Man, this is freaking brilliant to go send the priest over there. And the priests are convinced, right? Because Finau convinced them that he wants peace, and the priests are all doing nothing but so there can't be any deception in their voice, right? As they go for these few conferences, because they're convinced Finau wants peace, right? The old men seemed willing enough to listen to terms of accommodation, influenced perhaps by their prejudice in favor of Finau as their lawful king. Yet the young and spirited warriors who saw clearly enough into the artful character of Finau, with much less of the above prejudice, constantly objected to make a peace with a man whose honor and integrity they thought it impossible with any degree of certainty to rely. So the young warriors are saying, nah, we don't trust him. We already know this guy. We know who he is. The young guys. He's good at this. This is what he does. But Mariner says that the older men is like, nope, the priests came dressed in the garb of the gods, and there's no way. Like, of course we're going to trust that, right? The OGs are like, nope, this is our religion. This is our gods. This is what we look like. And they're good. The young guys know better. They're like, we don't care what it looks like. We know Finau. We know what he's done. We've seen all the pattern is set, right? And now so the young guys are saying, oh, he's using this now to get at us? He's using this to come and kill us? This is crazy. But Mariner says the older folks, the seasoned guys are like, no, look, this is what it is. They're in mats and they're in leaves. No, they're good, right? Everything looks kosher to them. But how can they not see it? It's crazy. Which also tells you how, and I don't want to call it superstition, although technically they trust it, right? That's as good as a contract. They're wearing ta'avala and sea leaves or ifi leaves. That's as good as a contract with God. That's as good as the word of God. And here you have Finau sending them this way to convince them this way because he knows they're gonna believe this. Oh my goodness, Finau, you bastard. At length, however, they said that as their lives were not a matter of so much consequence as the peace and happiness of Toeumu and her people generally, they were willing to withdraw their objections. The priests now returned to Nyafu with the warmest assurances from the chiefs of Feretoa that they would pay Finau an amicable visit the following day. So the priests finally, after 4 or 5 visits and conferences, convinced the Feretoa people, okay, we will come and meet with Finau. They used God, they used religion, they used the dress, everything. And now they've finally put down their guards and they're gonna come and visit Finau. The next morning, the chiefs and warriors of Feretoa with several women were seen coming towards Nyafu, advancing 2 and 2, all armed, painted, and decorated with streamers, forming altogether a very beautiful and romantic procession, bringing with them abundance of ngatu, yams, etc., as presents to their relations. We're about to witness the fall of Feretoa, basically the fall of Ava'u from its original leadership, because we already seen Tuponiwa fall and Finau Ulukalala, who the whole world at this point thinks that is where he's from and born and raised and everything was there. We're about to see how he actually conquers and becomes a Vava'u guy, quote unquote, and becomes the king of Vava'u, right? Because now the Feretoa guys are coming out, and Mariner says he sees two lines of people. They're wearing streamers, right? Stripped ngatu, whether it's on the arm. And you see this on some of the dance, the people that dance, right? You see people tie streamers on their arms. Remember the white ngatu on the head is a war thing. And you don't wear it for any time unless it's war. And then you have people dressed in peaceful attire as well, coming down the road from Feretoa to Nyafu to meet with Finau Ulukalala. In this way, they came into the king's presence on the Malae, where he was seated with his chiefs and matapures. The Vava'u people then laid down their spears, which were afterwards shared out to 3 of Finau's principal chiefs, who again shared them out to all those below them in rank. Looks like they're disarming themselves, because they come and sit down in front of Finau. They put their spears and everything down in front of them, and then Finau gives it to his guys, and his guys give it to their guys, right? So while they're unarming themselves, the Feretoa guys, Finau is arming his guys. They're on the Malaya. Mr. Mariner believes this to be always the case on such occasions, but it was the only instance of a peace formally established that happened while he was there. Oh, so I guess if you're gonna go, promote peace with somebody, that's what you do. You go and put the spears down in front of them, and you give them weapons of war, and then they take them as gifts, I guess, according to Mariner. They seated themselves round the Malae, and kava was prepared, the young chiefs and warriors of Feretoa waiting on the company. So they basically sit down, and now they're about to mix. They're about to fight kava, which is something that is in, Mariner said it's in every detail of these guys' lives. They always bring kava to things, especially important things. It is an honorable office to assist at kava parties. It is therefore generally filled by young chiefs. Okay? If you were to sit in the kava circle, and there's a lot more description here later on that we'll go through, but the youngest guys do, it says right here, it's an honorable office to assist at kava parties. The older folks, as far as in Tonga fight kava, we have the younger guys do all the kava stuff, right? It's an opportunity for them to learn how to serve. But it says right here, Mariner says that it's an honorable office, which means that these guys are stewards. The younger guys are stewards in kava ceremonies. They palu the kava, they crush the kava, right? They make the kava. They'll sit at the front by the bowl and serve the kava, right? Because it's the youngest ones and the lowest ones that are in front of the bowl going around, and then it goes up to the higher ups around to the end where the highest person sitting on the other side of the circle, because that person is honored enough not to serve anybody. It's the younger guys that are in the process and the motion of serving, right? And then we serve back, and we serve again, and we do kava. So the whole kava ceremony in this description also said it's an honorable office to serve for the higher ups, right? All this time, Finau's men were unarmed. Okay. Footnote: the visitors come armed for the sake of parade, giving up their arms afterwards as presents. Those that receive them must be unarmed as a proof of their amicable disposition, and that they do not mean to get them in their power by stratagem. So everybody was armed when they got there from Feretoa, but that was just a decoration just for the parade. As soon as they get there, they drop their weapons in front of the Feretoa guys, or the Nyafu people with Finau, and then the Finau's guys, that's when they shared those weapons among his men, and they shared amongst each other. But the weapons themselves were only for the parade. At the same time, neither side are armed with their weapons when they do this meeting. The only weapons that are there are the ones that the Feretoa come with, but the Nyafu guys are not supposed to be armed. They sit down and then they give their arms over to the Nyafu guys. This is through the conference of peace. This is what they agreed to do, because this is part of the culture. This is part of the ordinance of peace. Is okay. We agreed to the peace, and the priests had to go 4 or 5 days. Mariner said to actually say, okay, we're good. We'll be at peace, and we'll come and show you how in on this as far as peace. And they bring their weapons, put it down, and now Finau's guys have it. This is, as far as a strategy is concerned, this is a great strategy to use God and superstition and religion to get people to fall into place like this. Finau knew this was going to happen. It was all in his plan, which makes him a great strategist as far as military-wise. Okay. Man, the more I read this, the more Finau just becomes a... Oh, whatever. Okay. He had merely signified to his men that it would be better for them to remain at their houses, as it would inspire the Vau chiefs with more confidence than if they were present in a body. I don't know why my nose is so freaking itchy, bro. This is crazy. Israelites, she's... Oh, yeah. Yeah. I'm working on the chapter 7. I thought I'd go live for anybody who wants to watch the process live. But my nose has been itching this whole time, so I don't know what the edit is going to look like. But if you were a general, if you were a strategist, right, this is exactly what you would do, especially if you knew the people are going to do this, this, and this, if we do this, this, and this, because we've been doing this, this, and this for centuries. Finau knew this. He told his men, leave your weapons over there at home. We ain't going to need them, right? We already know what they're going to do. When people come to show that they're coming to peace, they'll bring us the weapons, right? We won't have our weapons. Leave those at home. Tells his guys, leave those at home. Once they bring the weapons to confirm that it's peace, because the priests did tell them that we're at peace, then we'll be armed. This is a brilliant plan. If peace isn't really what you want, right? And so far we can tell that Finau doesn't want that. Where are we at? We near and dear? 3 more pages left? All right. Okay. So just so that they stay confident in what we're doing, we can't bring out any weapons. All right. Okay. During the time the kapa was being served out, the king made a speech addressed principally to the chief of Feretoa. Okay, so Finau's talking to the chiefs of Feretoa, in which he acknowledged that they were not to be blamed for their fears and apprehensions as long as they believed him to be the treacherous character which his enemies had represented him to be. Basically, Finau's telling the chiefs of Feretoa, look, you guys can't believe that I'm a bad guy. I'm not. What a politician. And he's a politician, right? He sounds like a freaking politician. But he hoped that these calumnies were now all at end. basically saying that's all fake news. I'm not a bad guy. I hope this is the end of it, and that you'll see me for who I really am. And he's already sent the priest to tell him to tell all the people who he really is. He was willing, he said, to excuse them for having fought in honor of the memory of their late chief Tuponiua against his murderers, for if they had not done so, he should have considered them cowards. See, now he's talking up like a politician, basically saying, you know, I understand you guys fought for Tuponiua. That was honorable of you guys to do. Because if you guys didn't at least do that, I would have thought you guys were cowards. But you guys at least fought for Tuponiua, which is an honorable thing for all of you guys to do, even though we fought, right? But as most of these murderers had now by their death expiated their crime, and he himself, as he solemnly assured them, being perfectly innocent of that affair, the present peace, he was convinced, was a most honorable one to all parties. Finau's lying to them. He told them, even though I wasn't part of that murder that went on with Tuponiua, I think peace is the best for all of us. It's the best move. You know what? I don't know when the last time my freaking nose has itched like this. Is somebody thinking of me? Isn't that what they say? Oh, somebody's thinking of me. Hopefully a girl, right? He then made the most solemn protestations of the sincerity of his intentions toward them, and as a proof of his wish to avoid all future occasions of quarrel, he should send back all his people to the Hapai Islands, except the few Matapures who were to remain with him at Vava'u, which, for the future, he should make his place of residence out of the love and respect he had for them, while he should consign the government of the Hapai Islands to Tupotoa, who was to send him annual tribute. So now he's telling the Feletoa guys, look, I want to stay, I want to live here. I'll send most of these guys back to Hapai, and I'll let Tupotoa rule Hapai. He can have Hapai, he'll rule there. I just want to live here, right? And we'll live in peace here. That's what he's telling the Feletoa guys, right? Because most of the guys that killed Tuponiua, they're all dead. Most of them are dead. And now that they're all dead, we can live in peace. We're good. Que no? Right? When the kava was finished, the company rose up, and the Vava'u party returned to Feletoa to prepare an entertainment for the Hapai people the following day. Finau's got them. Hook, line, and sinker. Finau has got them fooled now. Because now the Feletoa guys, they're done mixing, they're done drinking kava. Yes, we're going to be at peace. You send most of those people home. You can have those matapures, basically. And now they're saying, all right, we're good. Let's go prepare the celebration for tomorrow. Right? So they're going back to Feletoa to prepare a celebration for the Nyafu guys, who are Ha'apai guys, by the way, for the celebration that's going to take place the next day. Early the next morning, all the chiefs, matapures, and warriors of Nyafu painted and decorated themselves with streamers and put on mats in token of Finau's inferiority as a relation to his aunt Toeumu, chief of the fortress of Feletoa. So apparently, there is a way to look to make sure that you go in as looking, basically humbling yourself to look like an inferior, right? Because even though Finau's the king, or the professed king of Hapai, and wants to be the king of Vava'u, and everybody already knows his plans and deals or whatever, he goes in to look humble. And he wants all his guys to do the same thing. Let's move in there humbly so that we at least look like we're inferiors. They took spears in their hands, and thus equipped marched out of Nyafu two and two, so the same way that the Feletoa guys went, these guys 2 and 2. So basically side by side, with Finau at their head, carrying with them presents for their relations in the opposite garrison. So they're going in a line, and Finau's at the head, and they have gifts and have things they're carrying from Nyafu to Feretoa as gifts, right? And they're dressed like inferiors, even though they have weapons. So apparently you trade off at times of peace, or you give weapons of war to your people who are you're trying to have peace with. In this order, they entered Feretoa and proceeded to the Malae, where all the chiefs and matapures of Toi Umu were seated, ready to receive them. A quantity of hogs, yams, and fowls were deposited in the middle of the circle, at the upper end of which a place was left vacant for the king to preside in, for his aunt not being there, he was the greatest chief present. So apparently there's a place for hierarchy to sit. And being that Toi Umu wasn't there, Finau went and sat in that place. Had Toi Umu been also present, she must have presided at the head of the circle, and the king, as her inferior relation, must have seated himself opposite to her on the outside among the common people, for no two relations of different rank can sit in the same circle together. Interesting. So because the circle was all people of the hierarchy, Finau was the highest. He sat in the center of the circle, right at the other end, where they're saying that if Toi Umu was there, Finau would sit among the people behind everybody, or at least amongst them, because no two relations of high, chiefs can sit in the same circle. That's interesting how that, that's just interesting. That's keeping it separate, right? Because you know how the Mariner was describing that if two chiefs of the same rank would walk by each other on the street, high chiefs of relations, there is an order of which one sits down while the other one walks by. That's why they try to avoid it. They try to avoid each other, right? And in this case, in the circle, they can't both sit there. And it says, an accurate description of the ceremonies regulations of a Kamak party will be given in the second volume. And we'll do that in the second volume for sure. Once we get past and out of the freaking first volume, for crying out freaking loud. All right. On this account, and out of respect of Finau, he being sovereign, Toi Umu did not make her appearance. So Toi Umu didn't even show up because of that, because of the whole chief thing, so that she doesn't have to force Finau to sit outside of the circle amongst the people, right? Bringing him down, right? That's also cultural. You don't want to do anything that'll influence somebody to humiliate, even though that's not it's not intentional. But you don't want to do anything that breaks the vibe of something with your presence or with words or with anything. Like, they really want, it's like humility rules. Humility reigns in a lot of the cultural behaviors of Tongans, because she could have easily came out there and put him, and that would have put him behind the circle amongst the people, but she didn't come out on purpose so that he wouldn't have to do that, right? And it could be out of fear, it could be out of, whatever else. But it happened to be out of respect, according to Mara, that she didn't want him to do that. Interesting. Finau being seated, his men, as they came in, deposited their spears in the middle of the circle, to be afterwards shared out in the same manner as was done by the Vava'u people at Nyafu the day before. They then retired to the outside of the circle, ready to wait upon the company. I don't know what the hell's going on with my itchy freaking nose. So the people with the weapons came in, brought them and put them in the circle, dropped them inside the circle, and then they went and sat outside the circle. Finau at the head. Vava'u guys on the other side, and then the Hapai guys or the Nyafu guys, Vava'u guys were staying in Nyafu on one side, with Finau at the head of the circle. A large root of kava was then split into pieces and distributed to be chewed as usual. We kind of went over this as far as kava back then. It's broken up and it's passed out in the circle or behind the circle of the guy who's going to bottle it, sitting in front of the bowl, and passes it to his attendants there, and they grab kava and they chew it, right? And once they're done chewing it, then they pass it forward. And I think that's the description he's going to give here. And while the kava was preparing, the provisions were shared out, ready to be eaten after it was drunk. So food is being prepared while these guys are preparing kava, and they're going to eat the food after they drink kava. This being done, and the provisions consumed, a second course of kava was prepared and served out, of which Finau, having drunk a small quantity, retired to pay a visit to his aunt. Okay, so they mix, and the description was, after everybody chews it, bring it back to the bowl, they mix it in water, and everybody drinks. This is how they mixed back then, right? Which nowadays, everybody has their own cup. There's hand sanitizer. Everybody washes their hands and all that. Nope. The Tongan Crips of old, they chewed it and freaking threw it in, mixed it, and they all drank together. Okay? So for those who are big on, let's sit down and use kava cups, coconut cups, if you're big on that, you want to try this, and you don't want to try this, you probably need to set your... Oh, snap. There are guys that are so stuck on, no, we're going to do it the old traditional way. Well, you want to do the old kava traditional way by chewing and spitting in it? Anyways, nah, I'm just kidding. I'm not just playing, yeah. We ain't that Tongan, right? Nah. We ain't about to do all that. The hell? All right. This being done, and the provisions consumed, the second course of kava was prepared and served out, of which Finau drank a small quantity, returned. Okay, then he's going to go visit his aunt. Okay, when he arrived in her presence, he went up to her, and with great respect, kissed her hand, and she, in return, kissed his forehead. Remember in the beginning of the book, Mariner describes how kissing the forehead was a sign of great respect and tender care type from a parent or from an auntie or whatever. It was the forehead that they kissed. He also described the kissing as far as cheek to cheek, making the sniffing sound, right? You put your cheek to cheek and, right, with the lips closed, and that was a respectful way of kissing, right? Where we know now these days, everybody mixed up sound, which is inappropriate to them because that is not an appropriate sound or thing to do because it's too intimate, right? Nowadays in this world and everything, that sound is just whatever, but I'm with I don't ever make the kissing sound when I say, to me, it's you'll hear me take a sniffing sound, because I think that's the most appropriate. Because old women or old folks back in the day, as far as growing up the whole time, that's all I've heard, that's all I'm used to, is that, and it feels and sounds appropriate to me. That's it, right? The kissing sound just sounds too intimate, and I agree with the old Tongan Crips on that one. When a person, okay, this is the footnote. When a person salutes a superior relation, he kisses the hand of the party. If a very superior relation, he kisses the foot. The superior in return kisses the forehead. Therefore, or there may be some doubt As to the propriety of the term to kiss in the ceremony, for it is not performed by the lips after our usual mode, but rather by the application of the upper lip and the nostril, as the more the appearance of smelling. Okay, this is he's saying it looks like this. It looks like you're smelling. So it's not an English kiss like mariners used to. When two equals are about to salute, oh, plus he's saying when you're kissing a superior, it's the hand that they kiss, and if it's a super superior, then it's the foot that they kiss, but in the manner, right? Not the that even looks inappropriate sometimes. When two equals are about to salute, each applies his upper lip and nostrils to the forehead of the other, or he applies his lips to the lips of the oh my gosh, there's all the itch. But without any movement of them or smack, as in our mode. So he's saying when two equals salute, right? They do that same movement right, on each other's forehead. So apply lips to nostrils to forehead, or apply lips. He applies his lips to the lips of the other, but without any movement of them or smack in our mode. Mariner is saying they don't do the smacking mode, the smacking sound, that, right? Dude, I've been freaking, my nose been. He's saying either on the forehead, if it's a person of equal, or on the lips. I wonder what it feels like to kiss somebody like that, right? Where am I? Shoot. Oh. Okay. Our kiss, they never adopt, not even between the sexes. They always ridicule it and term it the white man's kiss. Mariner tells is basically saying they don't ever do what we do. They don't ever do that. They'll never adopt it. They say that's the white man's kiss. They kiss that way. We don't kiss that way. And I believe personally that it has mostly to do with how appropriate it is, right? To do it that way. And how intimate the other way is. Because if you think about it, they don't ever kiss like that. And no, I obviously believe it, right? But when they're being intimate with each other, right? Man and wife, it's kind of hard not to kiss that way, right? Okay. Well, okay. Where were we? Oh, okay. He then sat down to drink kava with her and her attendants, and as she presided, he, of course, sat outside facing her. So if there is a circle, if this is what I'm picturing, a circle, and she's at the head of it, it said he sat outside facing her. I don't know if he sat behind, no, it couldn't have been behind, outside of the circle, probably behind me. If I was facing Toiumu, him facing her, just like a regular circle with us facing Toiumu, who's a presiding chief. When the kava was finished, he walked out to view the fortifications, on which occasion the mataapules of Toiumu waited on him and pointed out everything worthy of notice. So basically the mataapules were giving him a tour of the fortress. They descanted on the excellence of the plan and then gave him anecdotes of the war, telling him where such a chief was killed, where another lost his arm or a leg, where a cannonball had struck, etc. And as they viewed the outside of the works, they pointed out where the different murderers of Tuponiwa met their fate. So the chiefs or the Malapules are giving Finau a tour of the spot, and they're pointing out, yeah, this guy lost a leg over here, this guy lost an arm right there. It was freaking hilarious, dude. That it's a tour. And then it's as if they marked, okay, that guy one of the guys that killed Tuponiwa, yeah, he died right here, spear to the heart. Another guy that killed Tuponiwa, he died over there, right? Because they obviously knew who was involved, and they're giving Finau Ulukalala this tour of the fortress and who died where and who lost limbs where, like good tour guides would, right? All this, however, they told him in answer to his queries. Oh, so Finau was also asking, and they were answering questions. For it is a thing very remarkable in the character of the people of Tonga, that they never exult in any feats of bravery they may have performed, right? We talked about that a little bit before, as far as you don't ever tell your story, not to anybody, right? Everybody else tells your story, but you don't go promoting yourself in great feats, right? Everybody's maintains humility. And if you're to go boast, it'll be in your own house, telling war stories to your kids or grandkids. But other than that, you negate yourself of any honor if you go and promote your own stories. It's part of the thing that they feel like is pleasing to the gods and warrior mentality. Don't go tell your own war stories, which nowadays, shoot, everybody has a war story. On the contrary, so they don't tell their own stories. It says they take every opportunity of praising an adversary. Right? There you go. That's another one. Right? They take every opportunity to praise an adversary, somebody they went head up with, somebody they went to war with, against. They praise them. That's what they do. Although this adversary may be plainly a coward and will make an excuse for him, such as the unfavorableness of the opportunity, or great fatigue, or ill state of health, or badness of his ground, etc. In their games of wrestling, they act up to the same principle, never to speak ill of their antagonists afterwards, but always to praise him. Holy shite! Isn't that an honorable thing, like a person of honor would do? Because he's saying, even though they sucked, even though the ground was bad, and he lost, even though no matter what he did, he always still praised the guy, right? And Mariner's saying, even though plainly we knew the guy was trash, we knew he was going to lose that war, we knew he was going to lose that battle or wrestling, Mariner's saying they still praise him. That's what they do. So, because that was, to them, according to them, was more pleasing to the gods, right? Not to praise yourself, but to praise your adversary for whatever reason, and still give him props, even though everybody around him knows that he's trash. Very honorable. As an illustration of this character, it may be remarked that the man who called himself Fanafonua, right? Remember Fanafonua? He's the guy who said he was going to throw the spear into one of the cannons from Ava'u when the Hapai guy showed up with the cannons, and ventured his life to throw his spear at the muzzle of Mariner's carronade, never afterwards boasted of it, nor appeared to think he had done anything worthy of after notice, right? So even though Fanafonua did hit the cannon, even though it didn't go inside, because he said he was going to go inside, even though he threw a spear and it hit the muzzle of the cannon, which is something he claimed he was going to do before the war started, Mariner said he doesn't boast of it after. That's just, the stories of Fanafonua is now passed on by Mariner and other guys. And I don't know if there is any stories of Fanafunua still in Vava'u, but yeah, that's a worthy story to tell. Their notions of true bravery seem to be very correct. Thanks, Tall Cribs, listen up. Their notions of true bravery seem to be very correct, and the light in which they viewed the act of Fanafonua serves for an example. They considered it, in short, a rash action and unworthy a great and brave mind that never risked any danger, but with a moral certainty, or at least reasonable expectation of doing some service to his cause. So basically, he's saying, Fanafonua, even though he didn't have to, right? He probably shouldn't have, but he made the claim, and that's an exaggerated claim almost to say knowing, right? Because they know what the cannons can do. They were in Nukalofa together. The cannons tore body parts off of people. So they already know what the cannons can do. So for somebody to say, for this cause, I'm going to freaking tear the body of the cannon apart by throwing a spear into it, right? Fanafonua saying that. He didn't have to. But to make those type of claims for your cause, yeah, that's honorable, right? But then never ever mentioning it, even though it did freaking almost happen, is part of the whole bravery, manly warrior mentality type thing. I don't know what I'm trying to say sometimes. Oh! Okay. In these respects, they accuse Europeans of a great deal of vanity and selfishness, and unfortunately with too much justice, right? So, as far as being cocky, the Tongans accuse the Europeans of, you guys are too cocky. You guys talk too much about yourselves. You guys are self-filling and fulfilling and vain, right? Because a lot of stories you guys tell us about yourselves, where Mariner probably agrees with them. Yeah, you're probably right. We do. There's a lot of vanity, and they're saying, and you guys don't deserve it. You guys don't deserve those stories. Basically, is what they're saying. It must be remarked, however, that these noble sentiments belong to chiefs, matapures, and professed warriors, not much to the lowest orders. Now, this I think they have wrong. I believe that they have this wrong. As far as anybody, because anybody can commit a warlike act like Fanafunua did. He wasn't a chief, but anybody can. But he's saying that culturally, as far as the people is concerned, only praise the ones who are praiseworthy as far as the ranks. Only praise them. If you're going to praise anybody, praise them. Because plus they have a lot of responsibility. It's not like in Tonga, it's not like you just praise them just because of their rank. No, they have a lot of responsibility that they have to hold as far as what they do for the people, for their families, sharing the culture, information, stories. There's a lot of things that they, matapures and akis and all that. There's a lot of responsibilities they hold, which is plus the bloodline of the Tuitonga and whatnot, which is why they believe that they should always be praised or at least recognized when presiding in programs and whatnot, activities. Finau, having for a considerable time inspected the fortification, praising everywhere the judgment with which it was planned, retired to the house which had formerly belonged to Tuponua, where he passed the night. Did you see all those words? Did you hear all those words? What the hell, right? This is the process of why it takes so long when I'm reading like this, because look at all those words put together. Finau, having for a considerable time inspected the fortification, praising everywhere the judgment with which it was planned, retired to the house which had formerly belonged to Tuponua, where he passed the night. So basically saying, after he went and walked around and went through this tour of Feretoa and everything, he went and slept inside of Tuponua's house, right? Spent the night in Tuponua's house. The following morning, he summoned a general meeting of the inhabitants of Vava'u, which was soon accomplished, as the people were all at one or other of the two fortresses. So Finau wakes up the next morning and he calls a meeting. Everybody's there. Let's go. Let's meet. Dude, I don't know what the hell is going on with my nostrils, but this is freaking ridiculous that it's doing it right now. Like, it didn't do this today, all day, today, last night. But here in freaking Missouri, it may be the weather. I don't know. It's freaking annoying. Oh, snap. I made it. Oh, okay. This one's gonna make it for show. Nope. Who cares? I do. All right. All right. Okay. Here we go. So, Finau calls a meeting for both fortresses. Let's meet. He then gave directions to all the principal men respecting the cultivation of the country, which the late war had reduced to a sad state. So he's basically saying, you know what, we need to replant everything. During the war, we messed everything up, the plantations and all that, and goes to the stories of how beautiful this land is and how Vava'u is. And he's basically slowly becoming the king of Vava'u, right? The leader, by telling them, let's rebuild. Here, Vava'u. He commanded that everyone should be frugal as possible in his food, that the present scarcity might be recompensed with future abundance. Basically, see, let's not eat everything right now. Let's save some stuff. Let's not eat as much, whatever it is, so that we can start growing, so that then we can enjoy the abundance. He ordered his fishermen to supply him and his chiefs with plenty of fish, that the consumption of pork might be lessened. Okay, let's eat more fish and less pork. That's, damn it. That's an obvious thing to do, right? Because there's plenty of fish in the sea. Pork, not much. And having settled these matters, he next gave orders that the largest fortress of Feretoa should be taken down. What? Its fencing carried away by anybody who might want it, its banks leveled to the ground, and its ditches filled up, urging as his reason that there was no necessity for a garrison place in time of peace, particularly in a spot which could be so much better employed for building an additional number of more commodious dwellings. Finau is basically saying, all right, let's take the fortress, right? Because they made bamboos with mud behind it and in front of it, so that the cannons can go through. Let's take the muds down, take the fencing down, and whoever wants it can have it. Go take it somewhere where you can use it, because we're at peace. We don't need these walls or anything like that. Finau is basically stripping them, right, of any protection, is what he's doing. And they're buying it, seems like. The fortress of Nyafu, he said, might remain, for it was a place not convenient to live at, and therefore it was not worthwhile to take any trouble about it. What? He's basically moving in. He's basically demolishing his house and moving into Feretoa. He's basically saying, Nyafu's not worth it. Let's not... don't bother with Nyafu. Just leave Nyafu. Everybody is coming. Let's live here in Feretoa. He's basically moving right in to make himself king the most peaceful way he possibly can, with still a plan behind that, just in case. Seems like he can take over through combat. That's what it looks like, right? Because we're on the combat side of Finau, because we know what's going on. We know Mariner's, he's wise to this, right? These were his ostensible reasons, but his real motives were easy to be seen. Okay. He was apprehensive that in the event of another insurrection, the enemies might again possess themselves of the stronghold. But as to the other fortress, if he did not succeed, securing it for himself, he could easily dispose or dispossess them by destroying it with his carronades whenever he thought proper. So Finau setting himself up to rule. He wants the fortress taken down, the walls and the mud and everything, so that they can take over. And at the same time, he doesn't want to rebuild anything in Nyafu in case anybody runs away and go to Nyafu. He knows, he's saying that he can shoot cannons into the reeds or the bamboos in Nyafu and kill anybody in there. So he's disarming Feretoa and leaving Nyafu as the place anybody wants to run to and still be killed. Freaking Finau, bro. These orders were begun immediately to be put into execution under the inspection of the chiefs of the different districts of the island. So they even divided the islands in districts back then. Excuse me. So they have inspection chiefs of over the different districts. So the island was already divided into districts, and they had inspections and people chief over each district in Vava'u. The following day, the king gave orders to Tupoto'a to proceed back to Hapai, to the Hapai Islands, of which he constituted him tributary chief. Finau sends Tupoto'a back to Hapai to become the tributary chief there. So, which means anything that they grow and have of abundance, they give tribute to Finau annually, every year, just like Finau did and Tupo Niwa did to the Tupo leader, Tu'au. The tributes were to be sent to Vava'u half yearly as usual. Oh, every 6 months. Okay. It goes into the details of the tributes. The tribute generally consists of yams, mats, ngatu, dried fish, like fish jerky. I've had that before too in Tonga. They've also had octopus jerky, right? They had anything they hang out to dry because it's salty still and it's still good, chewy. Live birds, etc., and is levied upon every man's property in proportion as he can spare. So whatever you grow, you eat what you can, and you have, and you save and keep what you can, and anything you have extra becomes tributary to the tributary chief. So that's what Finau was talking about. The quantity is sometimes determined by the chief of each district, though generally by the will of each individual, who will always take care to send quite as much as he can well afford, lest the superior chief should be offended with him and deprive him of all he has. So apparently, as long as the chief says, okay, you've given enough, or they basically judge on anybody that grows and has livestock, all right, I can tell if you've given enough, and if I can tell you've given enough based on the size of your family and household, then cool. If you have extra that you're not sharing, then they take all of it, everything. Interesting. Imagine doing that for tithing, right? If you didn't pay tithing, to be forced to be taken 10%. But I feel that it's at least, and they use common sense. At least I can tell that you're sharing what you can, right? In tribute, still can feed your family and still have allegiance and tribute to your chief or your king. This tribute is paid twice a year, once at the ceremony of the Inasi, or offering the first fruits of the season to the gods in or about the beginning of October, and again at some other time of the year. Okay. So the tributes are given during the Inasi, which is around the time that the harvest happens, right? They're saying October, and then once at a different time, at another time. Which I really don't know or understand why you would need to give tribute of food if everybody grows food anyway. Everybody has livestock and whatnot. Nobody should be sitting around lazy and not doing anything. They didn't accept that. But also during the inasi, like the inasi in Hapai, they did gather all the food up of the first fruits or the harvest, and they just divided up evenly amongst everybody. So those who had great crops and plantations brought their stuff, and those who didn't have aren't that good at growing, or those who didn't grow or didn't have the share, or maybe they didn't have anybody to do it for them. Either way, during the Inasi and Hapai, Mariner did say to at least every single person on the island got at least a mouthful of pork. So from whatever the size of the families, all the way to the last person, to which is probably would have been a beggar, peasant. At least that guy gets a mouthful of pork also. So the tributes were, in my opinion, fair because based on them doing it according to how they felt after they were done feeding themselves. And again, at some other time of the year, when the tributary chief may think proper. Okay, so the tributary chief set the other time. And is generally done when some article is in great plenty. The tribute levied at the time of the inasi is general and absolute. That which is paid on the other occasion comes more in form of a present, but is so established by old custom that if it were omitted, it would amount to little less than an act of rebellion. So basically saying the one where the first fruits or the first, when the inasi happens, when the first, grand harvest, that's obvious, right? Everybody has plenty. They can give. The other time when they get for the tribute for the tributary chief, that time it's pretty much based on, what everybody has and doesn't have and whatnot. But they make sure that it's at least, whakailonga, like, let me just at least give you this, even though this is all that I have, so that you know that I'm not being rebellious against the tribute or the tributary chief, right? It may here with propriety be observed that the practice of making presents to superior chiefs is very general and frequent. The higher class of chiefs generally make a present to the king of hogs or yams about once a fortnight. These chiefs about the same time receive presents from those below them, and these last from others, and so on, down to the common people. The principle on which all this is grounded is, of course, fear, but it is termed respect or ofa. This is interesting too, because there are guys who didn't fear anything, right? Finau and Tuponiwa didn't fear Tuwaho. They went and killed him because of the high tributary taxes that he put upon Vava'u and Hapai. But what Mariner is saying that this is primarily, which is understandable, is people are going to pay tribute because they fear Finau or anything that Finau may do to them, or any chief in general, whether you're in Hapai or in Vava'u, right? If the tributary chief says, okay, bring your tributes, everybody's going to bring their tributes, right? Because now Hapai gathering all the tributes, Tupoto, I guess he keeps some for himself or keeps whatever for himself, and then the rest goes to Ava'u now where Finau Ulukalala stays, right? At the same time, Tupotoa can throw a inasi during the harvest and then just share it among the people just like Finau did in Hapai. But Mariner is saying that they do it out of fear. Okay, that's understandable. But from my perspective, I don't think there were too many in fear of the chiefs not to kill him, right? And I still have yet to see why. Well, it's obvious that Finau's a great man. Tupotoa is a great man. They were both protected, but them got together. They killed another great man, Tuponiwa, right? So, yeah, I don't think the Poniwa was feared. I think because the description of Mariner had about the Poniwa and his tender mercies and what Doi was trying to do with Vava'u as far as let people live free and give what they can, because at the end of the day, because we all plant and grow, it's not like anybody doesn't have time to plant and grow and raise their livestock, right? You bring all this food to me and I'm working, then it's like, well, what's the point? Yeah, let's just share it amongst everybody. That's what I would do it for. All right, bring all the tribute here, and then we'll just share it evenly among the size of the families and who needs what, right? Especially if I have my own family with 4 of my wives and our children, and we grow stuff, right? So I can imagine helping the ones who have too many children. I can imagine the ones who are handicapped or not married or widows and old folks. It'd be a good thing for them. But as far as people who can work, I would do it at, they say, Mariner says they do it at an Ofatu. So fear and love or respect. And all of them could be true. And all of them probably are. All right, let's see. Where were we? Oh, this right here. Okay. So every 6 months. At the same time, all the natives of Hapai who had come to the war were to return with their chief. So all the warriors who showed up to Vava'u with their chiefs, right? Because they're talking about people from different areas in Hapai, they're gonna return to Hapai with their chiefs. On this occasion, the young prince, Finau's son, Moinga Ngongo, shoot. Let me get a charger on here. Ugh. All right. Oh, it's raining over here in Missouri, northern Missouri. And when it rains here, looks like the clouds just fall. That's what it looks like. All right, here we go. Bro. Okay. All right. On this occasion, the young prince Finau's son, Moingangongo, went with Tupoto'a to the Hapai Islands, as he wished to look over his lands on the island of Foa. My dad's dad is from Faleloa, but Foa is a common place they go to, and I have a lot of family out there in Hapai, that area. So Tupoto'a, Moingangongo, Finau's son, they're going to go back to Foa, and Moingangongo wants to look over his land and whatnot. Mr. Mariner accompanied the prince, preferring his character and habits to those of his father. There you go. Mariner saying, all right, I'm going to go with Moingangongo because I prefer his habits, his character, right? As opposed to Finau, his adopted father, the king, the war guy, the general, the high chief of the land at this point. So Mariner doesn't want to hang out with Finau Ulukalala. Mariner wants to go with Moingangongo. They arrived safe at this island after a quick passage of about 9 hours. Damn, that's pretty quick. So they get back to from Feretoa, they get back to Foa in Hapai in 9 hours. Let me see if I got that right. Mr. Mariner accompanied the prince, preferring his character and habits to those of his father. They arrived safe at this island, after a quick passage of 9 hours. Oh, a quick passage. So maybe perhaps the wind was on their side, right? So that is a setup of chapter 7 right now. And so that's how, that's what it's going to be. That's what it is right now. We're done with chapter 7. And so the editing is going to happen. And forgive me, everybody, just like I said before, for every minute that you watch on these videos is at least an hour of editing. And so the last one was 46, 49 minutes, and that's how many hours it took, 46, 49 hours, which I'm happy to do when I do have it. And I be taking some mad breaks too, so I can't run away from that. But that's where we're at. We're in Vava'u. We kind of get the culture and whatnot of it. And I want to freaking start reading chapter 8 already, but now I got to, I guess I can come back and read chapter 8 tomorrow and then start editing next week. But I hope that you guys enjoyed this. I'm going to start reading it live and then doing the editing after, just so that we can get through it and then I can get some comments from everybody while we're reading. But we do know that right now in chapter 7, Finau is disarming the Vava'u people. But at the same time, he sent the Bo To'a back to, and this is in the history. In the history, the Bo To'a was the ruler of Hawaii, right? That's in the history right now as we have it. According to Mariner, the Bo To'a was in Vava'u when he went to go conquer with on conquest with Finau Ulukalala, and Finau Ulukalala sent him back, right? So this is a more, I like this better as far as reading reading it out loud and being able to say it and talk it out loud, because it gives a lot more description as far as imagery is concerned. And it's still in my mind right now. I can still see a naked girl, Finau's daughter-in-law, who ran away from Nyafu, running through the water, and her tapa or her ngatu falling off, and her running. Like, I would love a picture of if somebody painted that, of somebody turning back with a facial expression of embarrassment that her ngatu fell off while she's being chased by somebody with a big heavy club to kill her in the water. Like a lot of these images and the ones that I try to generate from AI come from how I see when I read the stories, because when I read it, I feel like I was there. I feel like I'm there. There's something about seeing it in my mind as if I was there that makes me bring up some of these images that I bring up on generating it from AI. But in a way, we all were there, right? We all were part of it. If anybody has any DNA that comes from this area of the world, then in essence, we were all there in spirit, watching our ancestors do these things. At the same time, we're learning how they were and finding out how a lot of these behaviors, especially Tonga, can benefit us, and how close to Christ-like or religious Christianity and God they believed, like they were willing to die for, even to the point where Finau knew how much we believed in God so much that he used it against his own people, the Vava'u people, to disarm themselves. So, yeah, our deep rooted belief and instinct in the higher being, for them to, like the one that we just read, as far as choking the baby to death or strangling the baby to death, and those men who were strangling the baby yelling out and exclaiming, "Oh yeah, vale," or vale, because they didn't want to, but their fear of God obviously superseded their love of the child. So a lot of these things, behaviors and habits, I guess, I can see in our people today. The closer they get to believing, in God. The institution itself right now, it doesn't even freaking matter at this point, knowing the history that we've always believed in God or a supreme being, that who cares what institution we're all a part of, because we all believed in the same God. And now we're divided into institutions and, sections and whatnot. When really, I'm grateful if anybody believes in God, period, because that means that our ancestors loved it to the point where they sacrificed each other, they killed for it, they died for it, and the word tapu or taboo is lived based on their absolute belief and absolute faith, which a lot of times, faith and blind faith and whatnot is unnecessary, but at the same time, it's the things that freaking wins wars, man. It's the thing that you can call upon allegiance and loyalty to fight and die for. And when it's about a people and their God and their allegiance to it, it's like, pfft, good luck, because not only are they the biggest people, I mean, if you freaking, these are the people who run it straight. You know what I'm saying? These are the run it straight guys. You start a fight with them or a war with them with the belief system that they have in God and willing to die for and look forward to, right? They anticipate death inside of war, and you get those guys to fight on your side. Then it's like, dang, it's crazy. The Christians freaking recruited, or, that our behaviors match up and align with Christianity to the point where we live and die for our old gods, right? Like these guys did, and now we run it straight. There isn't a people on this planet, not at this size. It's like this isn't on accident that we were built this size and made with this DNA and this humongous for nothing, right? It's almost as if the Lord bred warriors, like he's breeding soldiers and warriors and educating them in the ways of God, just so that he can show the world that this is how you die for God. This is how you fight for God. This is how these guys, like these run it straight guys, yeah, these are the guys that are soldiers and warriors of my choosing and of my upbringing. So, anyways, I'll probably just come back and do chapter 8 and start editing. The editing takes 6 months. Hey man, have faith in me. Have faith. I got this. All right, we'll stop this recording. 2.5 hours of recording. Oh wow. Okay. So I've recorded for 2.5 hours. That's 60, 120, 150 minutes. Damn, so it's gonna take 150 hours, bro. But yeah, I hate that we won't hear from you for another 6 months. I hate that freaking that has been true, But I'll get on this editing, and this editing is gonna look different because I usually read this to myself and then kind of think about it, and then try to put it on here. But the way I'm doing it, like I did it today, which is something like this, thought I'd try. I was like, that's actually better because I can talk and read, which is something I should have been doing, but I'm doing it specifically for the camera. But I should have been doing that, and then catch all this information that doesn't come out of my mind or out of my mouth, and do it this way. All right, but I stopped recording. The live is still on. Okay. Any questions from any of you 7? Any questions from what we read today? And I like that. I kind of like that we read it together. Slick Rick. Kataki Slick Rick, man. I'm honest. No, I'm cool, man. I only go out to work when they call me, because I'm a yate guy. And now, and you can bring, yet out here in Missouri and not do a damn thing after that. It's a lovely schedule. But it does take, oh, yeah, wait. Shit. That started my diet today. See if I can lose some of this, huh? Next minute. Diabetes, obesity, sugar, no finish the book. We don't want that. And somebody's gonna have to come, finish the book for me. If I die of diabetes. But, hi. We've been in Indiana the past. Well, I got back from Indiana like 3 weeks ago. Daughter got married last week. So really, I just been freaking lazy. But that was a good read. I like doing it like that, man. We'll do it like that more times. All right. Go Doms. Yeah, Phil, any questions or anything? That was an interesting chapter, huh? Finau went from conquest, let's go battle, let's go do this, let's go kill, to, you know what, let's just live in peace. We're, at this point, it's almost like they got onto the island, went to war, went to battle, and then eventually they're like, all right, now we're just living here, fighting for free. Which is kind of weird. Damn, 2.5 hours. Not only is that editing, is that going to be on editing, but it's going to be chapter 7. Good thing is I got it all on one take. Chapter 7. Yup. Save EE. Next minute. Editi. The longest thing is looking up stuff, looking up pictures and images, and that's why it takes for friggin' ever. And trying to start doing sound with it, adding different sounds. I thought about doing that. That's gonna freaking take forever. I think the live is the guys who are gonna be most up to date, because it's gonna take a while before I freaking finish editing this. And I'll even read chapter 7 again live. It's the editing that takes for freaking ever. That's why I did some of the editing in 2 pieces or 2 parts, is because reading it was, but you saw how the freaking words were, right? Yeah. I'm gonna fuck around and read chapter 8 just for those who are here. You know what I'm saying? Read chapter 8 just for those who are part of the journey. 8. Let me see how many chapters is in this freaking book. The fish, which they called Ulukalala, is about the size of the common sprat. See, when I read stuff like that, I'm like, all right, what's a Ulukalala? Then I gotta call somebody, phone a friend or whatever. But I do, there are the interpreting the songs or translating them is another thing that I wanna mahepuku. So Firi Moyatu. Oh, this is the good one. This is the interesting chapter. I remember this one. for those who are here, this chapter is where, chapter 8 is where Finau Moatu goes and visits Finau. Finau tells, well, Moatu's with Finau. Finau tells Moatu to go to Hihifo on Tongatapu and go grab him a kalai, right? A kalai is a bird, and I guess they used to hunt these things, or, yeah, they used to hunt them. They're birds that used to fly and run away and whatever. They used to hunt these birds. Anyway, Moatu goes and he runs into, I remember who he was. Can't remember what his name was. I think it was Tupo or Mounga something. Anyway, it's in here. Makapapa. Lolohea Pipiki. Lolohea Pipiki, bruh. And 3 others, all chiefs. Where else are they? Uh-oh. There's some insurrection going on in chapter 8. Anyways, it's the story that Moatu tells Finau about these people. Tonga Moonga, I think his name is, went and served as a cleaner, cleaned the governor's house in England. So he was in Fiji with his wife. He ended up in England, and while he was in England, he worked at the governor's mansion. And they kept, giving them instructions on how to clean and whatnot. And this guy told this Tongan chief, said, "No, I don't do that. That's not. I'm a high person in my country." And the governor told him, "You're not a high person here." And so they started working. They started working and giving them, coins, shillings, right? Sirini comes from the word shillings, which is a form of payment. I don't know if it's silver or if Sirini is it's a measurement of money of some sort. Anyway, they didn't know what to do with this, so they're in the governor's mansion cleaning, and then they go and they're stacking these things on the dresser in their room, not knowing what it is. Then they go to town one day, and they go walk into a restaurant, and this Tongan chief thinks, look, you can go and sit, right? Because we've talked about how people eat in Tonga. If you see a fire, you go over there, you sit there, you eat with them. So he takes him and his wife, he thinks, okay, we can go and eat over there. Let's go to this restaurant. They walk in, they sit down, they're waiting, to be served or whatever. And they don't call for the waiter or anything, but they're looking, I guess there's a menu there, but they're expecting to eat for free. And finally, the main cook comes out, or the master of the place comes out and said, "What do you guys want? You guys aren't ordering or anything?" And they were like, "Oh yeah, just bring us food." And they're like, what do you want? What can you afford?" And he was like, "Afford," and he was trying to make the best with whatever English he had. And then he tells them, "Yeah, money." And then he shows them these coins and these things, and then it hits him. Oh, that's what they're giving us at the governor's mansion. I don't know if it's daily or weekly, but we have that stacked on our dresser. We didn't know that that's what you guys used to pay for food, right? And he realizes that that's what it's for. And then he's like, "Oh, so they won't let us eat here for free. We have to work, and working brings those gold pieces or those shillings, and we got to bring that here to pay for a meal to eat." That concept was given to him. I think his name is Tonga Moonga, but anyways, or Moonga something. Anyways, he and his wife live in the governor's mansion for a year and learns the process of money. And then they go back to Hihifo, where they're from. Finau at this time sends Moatu to Hihifo to grab a kalai. And this Moonga guy tells him the whole story of him staying in the mansion. Man, I wish we could hear that story from him, but he told them, and then Moatu goes and faikavas with Finau and tells him the story. And Finau's like, he's giving the description of money, of the different prices, the different sizes, the different colors, the different, what it is, whether it's a gold piece or a silver piece or a copper piece and size and whatnot. And Finau tells them, that's crazy. That's what that's for. Because if I knew what that was for, I wouldn't have burned the barrels full of it in the Port-au-Prince when we burned Port-au-Prince down. I didn't know that it was that valuable to them, right? Because they're pieces of metal. And then Mariner tells, or I mean, Finau Ulukalala tells Fidemoyatu, that to me is no different than Pa'anga. Because that's all Pa'anga is chinkling, little trinklets or whatever that you tie around your wrist and your thing. And all it is for making noise. I thought it was just Pa'anga. That's what I thought it was. Ever since then, they started calling money Pa'anga from that day forward. And that's in this chapter. You're privy to it for anybody who's about to watch me read chapter 8. This is where the word Pa'anga comes from, is from that story. And I think that's the chapter that we're in right now. So there's a lot of details like that as far as that's concerned, because I never knew why they called Pa'anga Pa'anga. That's what they call money, is Pa'anga. I had no idea that they called Pa'anga Pa'anga because Finau Ulukalala said those coins or those silinis and shillings that I left barrels of on the Port-au-Prince and burned it down, I had no idea that it was that valuable to these people, because to me it just looked like Pa'anga, right? And Pa'anga is the ifi seed or dried up seeds that they wrap around their wrist and their ankles that they use to haka and make noises with. That's what they use. Is Pa'anga. I didn't know that was called Pa'anga, right? I thought Pa'anga was just money. Until I read Finau say that to Fidemoyatu, and for them, then on, in Vava'u started calling money Pa'anga. So, because of its use as noisy little coins, right? So, anyways, Slick Rick Malo is sticking by. Live bong bongi. Shoot, man, I should find a time that I should go live every day. That way, and I don't know, can you watch this live? I'm not sure if if the live will save or what. Maybe it will, huh? I'll have a live read, and then I'll have an edited read that'll come up later, because I read that whole chapter already. And I hope this live can show up on my page so that guys can just watch it from there. Bro, nobody, I drive around here, I leave my keys in the ignition overnight and all of that. I don't even know what the purpose of alarms out here for. Nobody's ever stolen the car out here in northern Missouri, because there's 6,000 people in Trenton, which we call Tonga, of course, because, we're part of the people that named that kid that took a name everywhere. Huh? But yeah. Bruh. Let's see you go. Oh, fuck you, man. Anyways. Alrighty. Okay. Hey, mo kay head na be. Oh snap! Yeah, I've always thought about doing this live, and even setting up another phone or another device to do it live on TikTok too, because I know that some follow on TikTok. Only because the edited version is edited, right? There's a lot of things that I say on there that I obviously edit out, and the whole reading and not talking it out. I like that. I like that about this. But if anybody has any other questions, they went extinct. Go ahead and alo extinky, man. Shoot, man. I should probably just start doing this from the beginning, huh? Just start from chapter 1, live chapter 1, and just keep going without any edits. But the whole editing and imagery, yeah, because it takes so freaking long. Sometimes I just shy away from even starting the next chapter because I know what it's gonna look like. The workload is gonna look like. So, but I'm glad I was able to freaking finally stop by today and do it. Now I'm gonna check to see if I do go live. All right. Okay, Gaunama. If there's no other questions or comments, thanks for watching. Shoot. If I ain't got nothing going on tomorrow, I'll probably just stop by and do chapter 8 live. Because chapter 7 is a good thing, but it's one of those wait chapters, you know. Or it's like a solution or resolve chapter before the next ordeal. So chapter 7 was a resolve. Finau just broke everybody down and took down the walls and everything. Huh? Kind of know what that guy's up to now. Anyways, okay, Gaudams, thanks for watching. I'll damn, should I freaking do it tomorrow too? Chapter 8. If I can save the lives and it'll show up on my thing, on my page, that way people can just watch it, then I'll do another live tomorrow. And we'll just go and do lives like every day, because this is easy. I can just do this and read and talk about it while I read. Like that's freaking easy. I'd rather do that because the editing is going to take for freaking ever. And I'll do that for those who like that, but they're going to have to wait a little bit longer. But for those who like the live, just come back. I'll just do it live tomorrow, chapter 8. Yeah, that way we can be way ahead of them, huh? Of the editing for sure. Okay, Malo, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys tomorrow at, what's a good time? Anybody on here, what's a good time for everybody to do this? Or should I be doing this? Because sometimes I used to watch things while I was working, so I didn't care. It would just be on my thing. I have the subscription on whatever, on YouTube, so I would just pop it in and listen while I work, or should I wait till later? Anyways, you guys let me know. Ofatu, we'll see you guys in the morning or tomorrow. Okay.